Here we go on a Wednesday edition of the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. And don't forget, you can watch the show live, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. Just search 973 ESPN. How's everybody feeling on a Wednesday? It is a extremely busy day out there. The NHL free agency is underway. Flyers have already made a pair of moves. Get more details over at 973ESPN.com from our Flyers insider, Kevin Durso, writing about the two pickups the Flyers have already made. Tons of Ben Simmons news for you throughout the show. Paul Hudrick will join me later on at 3:20. We'll also get into the Phillies rumors and news that are going on as well. As the Phillies had a trade yesterday, the trade fell through. They lose again, couldn't come back. Starting pitching starting to be a problem. Scott Lauber tonight at 5. But the big story, as they would say on Channel 6 Action News, but the big story, as the Eagles are back on the field for the first time this year. They reported to training camp yesterday, and as Lane Johnson said as he was walking in, back to school, they are back. The Philadelphia Eagles are back. Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni, the head coach, addressed the media today. So much to dive into today. Zach Ertz has checked in. The Eagles' tight end is at camp, and he avoided fines and, friction with the team moving forward here. And Nick Sirianni discussed it today. The Eagles, of course, have been at odds with Ertz and what's happening here this offseason, and he still decided to report to camp. He did not want those fines. The team obviously trying to find a trade for him, according to Mike Garafolo. Ertz has not forgiven or forgotten what has happened over the last year with this organization. Today, Howie Roseman pretty much said he anticipates Zach Ertz being with this team when the season starts on September the 12th. So it will be interesting to see what happens with this whole situation. But the first thing we know is that Zach Ertz is in. Also today, what I thought was kind of interesting is the fact that Nick Sirianni, I don't want to say addressed the starting quarterback situation, but he did kind of open the door and gave a little insight, which was, we want Jalen Hurts to take the reins. We want him to win this job. He stopped short of saying that he is the quarterback of the football team. He stopped short of saying that he is the Philadelphia Eagles starting quarterback, but that he was going to be given the opportunity. He's worked hard, and they want him to take the reins, but they will not say, yes, Jalen Hurts is the starting quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles. So we've got a lot to dissect as we get ready for this Wednesday show. Hopefully everybody's doing well out there. You can hit me up in a variety of ways. 609-403-0973. That's the text board, 609-403-0973. That's the text board. You can always get us on the free mobile app. Just tap on the app, take the show on the go, and hit the text us button function, and your text messages will come through the app as well. So you can get us through the phone text, you can get us through the app text, and of course, if you're watching the show live on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, you can always leave your comments in the live stream in the comment section, and we will do our best to get to those as well. I mean, look, here's the one thing I take away. Howie Roseman said today. Now, Roseman and Sirianni spoke. I don't know how many people just saw Aaron Rodgers' press conference, but I will say that one was certainly more informative and riveting than what the Eagles gave today. Not to shoot down what the Eagles said, because I thought there were some moments in the press conference that stand out, and we will get into those. But Ertz reporting today, and Howie Roseman said he doesn't expect Ertz to be moved. I think that is really the standout comment of the offseason so far. We all know that Ertz's future with this team has been speculated upon essentially the entire time since the Eagles finished the season last year against the Washington football team. Now, Ertz said he didn't know what was going to happen, but this offseason was filled with speculation of he's allowed to go find a trade. The team is trying to trade him. They don't have offers that they want. Nothing ended up happening. Now, Roseman, as we know, has said, hey, if we can't find something, we're not just going to give Zach Ertz away. Now, he was spotted today having a conversation with Ertz on the field. And he told the reporters today at the press conference, the team has a tremendous opinion of Zach Ertz and that they think he will be on the roster. Then Nick Sirianni was asked, well, if that's the case, will that make you have to play more 12 personnel? And he basically said, not really. So it'll be interesting to see if Zach Ertz is here, how he is utilized by Nick Sirianni and this crew. 609-403-0973. That and, the whole stuff with Jalen Hurts as they report to camp. But there was something else that Howie Roseman said today that kind of makes me feel like how many people, it's funny, somebody tweeted at me yesterday that there was no buzz. There's no buzz about the Philadelphia Eagles reporting to camp. And I'm not saying that person's wrong. I just feel like the expectations are kind of all minimal. I don't think there's very many people who look at this team and think this is a playoff team. I have said many times on this show, it wouldn't surprise me at all if this Eagles team made the playoffs. And there's one reason. And it's something that Howie Roseman actually said today that makes me feel that the Eagles feel the same way I do about their team. And Roseman went out of his way, not to say out of his way, but he certainly addressed the offensive line and how the offensive line problems that they had last year were a big reason why, in his mind, the team struggled the way that they did. And it's another indication to me the way this team has gone about it. Now, I wasn't here the other day. On Sunday, the Eagles signed Steve Nelson. It's a move that we've talked about a lot during the offseason, and it's a move that finally came to fruition the other day. The Eagles signed Steve Nelson. It's a one-year deal. The deal to me to bring Steve Nelson in here tells me again that the Philadelphia Eagles think they can make the playoffs. And I see everybody out there, the Cowboy fan, the Giant fan, the angry at life Eagle fan, rolling their eyes and saying, this team's not making the playoffs. Their actions say differently. The Eagles' actions this offseason are not the actions of a team that thinks they're just going through the motions this season. The actions of the Eagles football team this offseason is, we can win this division and we can make the playoffs. There's something that I've said in the past. I'm not some Howie Roseman hater by any stretch of the imagination. The guy won a Super Bowl. I respect that. And that, to me, is way more indicative of where this team is than I hate this guy, he's horrible, that crowd. And I give you the reason why, and I've said it before and I'll say it again. The Eagles have one back-to-back losing season in Howie Roseman's tenure. They did it a couple of years ago. They went 7-9 in back-to-back years. If they lose again this season, another losing season, that would be the second back-to-back losing season that they've had under Howie Roseman's watch. So why is that important? Because I don't think the Eagles see themselves as a losing team this year. I don't think they look at themselves and say, we're an under 500 team. And the actions of this offseason suggest that. Steven Nelson, when he got released, he's been getting offers from half the league. 14 different teams reached out to him. Could have gone to the Houston Texans, could have gone to the Chicago Bears, could have gone to the Bengals, could have gone to the Bills. The Bills have Super Bowl aspirations, but he decided to go to Philadelphia. This is a guy that, was a third-round pick by the Chiefs. He's essentially been a starter, 30 games for the Steelers the last 2 years. He's been a solid starter. He's not great. Unless you like Pro Football Focus, they think he's pretty good. The last 2 years, Steve Nelson Pro Football Focus has him graded as a top 11 cornerback in the entire league. So Darius Slay and Steven Nelson, all of a sudden, Eagles secondary is not so bad. Now, if you have an injury, you're back to square one. This team has dealt with injuries over the last 3 years, so I'm not saying it would be shocking. But when they start the season, if those three guys are on the field, Steve Nelson, Darius Slay, and Avonte Maddox, it's pretty good. The actions of the Eagles as they enter camp today suggest we're not an afterthought. We're a playoff team. Why do we look at this offseason? The actions of the Eagles suggest they think they're a playoff team. And Howie Roseman said it today when he was asked about all the skill players and this and that, and he went back to, guys, our offensive line was a mess last year. The offensive line we had last year was a problem, and we hope to not have that problem right now. We hope to not have the problems that we had on the offensive line last year. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Joe Show checks in. He says, I think I'm the only one that thinks the Eagles win 11 or 12 games. You're probably the only one there. I think the team can be in the 10 area. I think the ceiling would be like a 10. I'm not suggesting that that's my official definitive answer. There's the high mark and the low water mark. I think that this team can surprise people and probably be a 10-win team. And if the things go awry, like there are 5 to 6 to 7, really. This team has a lot of question marks. But these are a couple of things, and I wrote about this over at 973ESPN.com the other day, that there are 5 definite battles to keep an eye on at training camp, right? There's other ones, but these 5 stood out the most to me. 1, someone has to win the left tackle battle. Now, that started today. From the tweets that I can decipher, it looks like Dillard got more reps as the number 1 left tackle than Mailata did, but I don't know that it was much more than, 55 for one guy, 45 for the other guy. I don't think it was 80-20, right? I don't think it was so egregious, right, that one guy was definitively going to be the left tackle and the other guy was out. I think Dillard, from what I understand or what I'm reading, Jeff Kerr tonight and Jeff Mosher tonight, so we've got the 2 Jeffs on a Wednesday, will give us some more clarity here on what they know. But I don't think that left tackle spot is going to be decided, obviously, on day number 1. This thing's going to play out. This thing's really going to play out. The second story to me is that the defensive line has to continue to be the strength of this team. And what does that mean? Well, you've got Brandon Graham. You've got Fletcher Cox. You've got Javon Hargrave. It's one of the best trios right there in the entire league. You add in Derek Barnett and Josh Sweat and Ryan Kerrigan, and this is some nice depth at the position. They've got some pretty good talent between those 6 players. And for this defense to succeed, the Eagles need that group to generate a pass rush, which then, of course, forces opposing quarterbacks into mistakes, which they kind of need because they have a suspect secondary. Well, Steve Nelson and Darius Slay, you have a nice tandem all of a sudden. It's amazing. You ever have a baseball team and one guy's not in the lineup and all of a sudden it makes the lineup feel so much different? You're like, man, that one guy lengthens the lineup so much more. And you pull that one guy out and the lineup just doesn't look the same. It's crazy to say that Steve Nelson not here, you feel one way about the team. Steve Nelson, why not? Great. Don't you feel a lot different about the team all of a sudden? Just one guy changed the way that you feel about the team. Right? Doesn't it? does for me. If Steve Nelson's not here, I think this team's problem, and it's not like he takes him himself, that Steve Nelson is so good that this team is a 4-win better team. No, that's not what I'm saying. But not having someone on the other side is almost so demoralizing that going into the game, you just almost can't compete weekly. Now, I'm not saying you're better than the teams, but you can compete. And if you can compete, you can win. The margin of victory in this league is usually within a touchdown. If you have a corner on one side who is just not an NFL caliber player, it's tough to compete. I'm not saying Steve Nelson's making the all-pro team here or even a Pro Bowl. But what I am saying is he helps you compete. And if you can compete, you can win. And the Eagles have now the building blocks. Here's the one issue I have. Can that group stay healthy? You've got a lot of guys. Brandon Graham, 33. Fletcher Cox, 30. Kerrigan, 32. Javon Hargrave, 28. Now, what do those guys all have in common? Well, they've all been relatively healthy in their careers. Brandon Graham has played at least 15 games in 10 of his 11 years. Fletcher Cox has played in 14 games in all 9 seasons. Ryan Kerrigan has played in 16 games in 9 of his 10 years, and Hargrave has played in at least 15 games in every season he's played in the league. So one of two things. Either it's somebody's time to have that big injury, or those guys should stay pretty healthy up front, which should make you a pretty decent front 4. Right? And if you get those guys with Steve Nelson, the whole Steve Nelson thing has really changed the perspective. I think you go from a ceiling of a 7 to 8 win team, and I say ceiling because the floor could be below that, to now all of a sudden, and again, this isn't, wow, Steve Nelson's worth 4 wins. No, but him being able to help you compete now is way different. The competitiveness of the secondary has certainly changed, and that is a big factor. They needed that in the worst way. You could not go into the season with what you had. But what Howie Roseman said today, his words are suggesting, his actions are suggesting this team can make the playoffs. That's what he's saying. So you might not like Roseman. You might think he's the worst. I think you got to give him some credit that he's done a pretty good job with this team this offseason. Agree or disagree? 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. That's the number to text in. You can tap on the app and hit us up, hit the text us function on your app, which you can take anywhere. Take the show on the go and hit the text us button, and you can get your messages into us on the free mobile app as well. And, of course, if you're watching the show live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, you can always send us a message through the comment section of whatever platform you are watching on. All right, that's where we start today. Busy show. How many people out there are saying, you know what, I think Roseman did a pretty good job this offseason? And how many people out there say, nope, terrible job, get rid of the guy? Well, I know a lot of people just won't give him a chance, but I think if you take a step back, you've got to say they had cap problems, and I think he kind of got around them pretty well, did the best he could to clear out the cap space and address some problems that this team had at linebacker, at safety, at corner. Drafted a wide receiver they needed there. Added to the offensive line. Did the Eagles have a good offseason, in your opinion? Be fair. Be honest. 609-403-0973. This is the Sports Bash. All right, a Wednesday show, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. And, of course, you can tap the app and send us a text through the app. Just hit the text us function. And we'll read them off as we get them. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. Cole from LBI wants to know, how's Josh doing today? I bet the Phillies are driving him nuts. Did you have a problem with the Phillies while I was gone, Josh? I forgot the Phillies were even playing today, actually, to be honest with you. He says he's exasperated with the Phillies. The best part about being away for the last couple of days, which I appreciate Josh jumping in and filling in and taking the reins while I was gone. He did what the Eagles want Jalen Hurts to do. He took the reins while I was gone. And I thank him for doing that, as always. It was nice to get a couple of days out of here. Obviously, I wasn't just sinking in the sun and sipping Mai Tais by the Pacific Ocean out there. But, yes, our team went to the Mid-Atlantic Regionals, and we won. We're going to be heading to the World Series in about 2 weeks, so I will be out during the World Series, which will be August the 12th. So I will not be here. I'll be at the World Series. So thanks to Josh for filling in. He'll be doing so again while I'm gone. It's funny because I was around baseball so much, and I had separated from the Phillies so much. I basically did not follow them. I did not pay attention. Then, of course, last night we were driving home from Altoona, Pennsylvania, and when we got into the listening area, we put the Phillies game on, and as soon as I popped it on, there was an error by Didi Gregorius, which then led to a 3-run homer by Juan Soto, which I think is still in orbit, right? I think is still going, by the way. But I will get into the Phillies in a little bit later. Scott Lauber's going to join me to talk a little bit about them. But, the Phillies are what they are. They're 3.5 games back. The Mets aren't very good. You've got that whole situation. The Phillies tried to make a trade yesterday. They did make a trade. The trade got nixed because of a medical situation from the guy that the Phillies were sending the Pirates. So the Pirates nixed that deal and then ended up trading the pitcher to Seattle. So the Phillies are still in search of a guy. And I know at 5 o'clock tonight, when Scott joins us, we'll see what happens. Now, according to some sources, the Rockies are listening to some teams on pitcher John Gray, and one of those teams is the Phillies. Look, the Phillies are going to be in on every guy you hear. So don't be the guy that says, oh, this isn't good. They're calling everybody. The Phillies are calling everybody. They need pitching. They cannot stop. They have to stop trotting Vince Velasquez and Matt Moore out there. They can't keep doing it. They know it. You know it. I know it. We all know it. So for Josh to be exasperated is obvious. They can't keep trotting these guys. Matt Moore stinks. He stinks. And somebody tweeted, I actually think it was Bob Wankel from Crossing Broad the other day, right? Bob tweeted, okay, the question he asked was, and look, I want to preface this by saying Matt Moore has 5 starts. He has a 7.15 ERA in those 5 starts in the month of July. And Bob Wankel from Crossing Broad tweeted, you must pick one. Would you like to see Matt Moore make a 10th career start with the Phillies, or would you like to see Vince Velasquez make a 116th start? And I answered quite easily. The answer to me was simple. I'd rather see Matt Moore get to 116 starts if I never have to see Vince Velasquez start ever again. Right? If I have to pick one, Matt Moore can start another 100 times if I never have to see Vince Velasquez pitch again. That's how bad I think Velasquez has gotten. He's completely lost confidence. He has no... He's complaining the other day that they took him out and he had more pitches left in his arm. You have more pitches left in your arm, but they all stink. It's like firing blank bullets. I don't want to see the pitches you have left in your arm because the ones you threw tonight already sucked. They have to make a move. It's crazy that starting pitching now, the back end of their rotation, has actually almost become more important than their bullpen. That's how bad Velasquez and Moore are. That's how unusable Spencer Howard has become. So are they going to make a move? Yes. Are they going to be in on every name you hear? Yes. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Dan from EHT on the text board says the Eagles' corners are good. Safety and linebackers maybe the worst in the NFL. I wouldn't agree with that. I think the corners are solid now. They're not spectacular. Slay is good. He's not great. I think he's, at that point where he's good. He's not great. I think he was disappointing at times last year. I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that he didn't have any help on the other side. He has that now. Their corners are solid. They're not spectacular. The safety spot, Anthony Harris is a fine safety. McLeod, if he's healthy, he's pretty good. So their safeties, the problem is both those guys are a little older. They probably are injury risks, especially McLeod. So that's a problem. The linebackers, I don't think they're the worst in the NFL anymore. After they got rid of Nate Geary last year, the linebacking situation wasn't nearly as bad. Singleton did an okay job. He's average. Wilson can play. Wilson's not great. He's solid. He's better than anybody they had last year. And their linebackers are an upgrade from last year. And I don't think the linebackers were such a problem by the end of the year last year. They weren't great. They're not playmakers, but they weren't. And Geary was a problem. Teams were looking for 49 and just going after him all the time. These two guys are serviceable. They're not playmakers. I think the Eagles' defense as a whole is solid, not spectacular, can be very good if they're defensive front. The problem I have with those guys, Kerrigan, Graham, Fletcher Cox, is they're all in their 30s. Break down at any time. I don't anticipate this Eagles defense being great. I don't think it's going to be dreadful unless injuries start to happen. They have no depth. Their defense has no depth. And that's where the issue to me lies. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. If you're watching the show live, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, I see you guys over there. Jalen checks in. He's watching on YouTube today. He says, Mike, I'm very happy with Howie's moves. The team should be infinitely more watchable than what we had at the end of the season. New and exciting quarterback. Happy to see that. New hyperactive head coach, Devonta Smith, Miles, real secondary. All right, a lot to unpack there, Jalen. Yes, the team should be more watchable. Their offensive line will be not only considerably better, their offensive line will be one of the better offensive lines in the league if they're healthy. If you have one of the better offensive lines in the league, that gives your skill position players a chance to do something. Their offense should be pretty good. Way more watchable. Why was their offense not good last year? The quarterback was dreadful. Yeah, there was problems on the offensive line, compounded by the fact that the quarterback was dreadful. I hate to say it. I like Wentz. I hope he does well. I think he might do well. I was a big Wentz fan. He was horrible last year. He was horrendous. Now, you might say, well, the line. I'm not a big metric guy. I'm not a big analytics guy. The metrics and the analytics and the numbers say it wasn't the offensive line that was the problem. It was the quarterback. And I tend to agree. I don't think the offensive line was that dreadful. What I think the problem with the offensive line was they didn't have continuity, so they couldn't run the ball. They couldn't get next to the same guy each week. One week it's me, this guy playing next to me, and I think that got to the quarterback. I don't think that the quarterback was reading the room right. He just assumed the line stunk, and because of it, he's rushing throws, holding on to the ball too long. The quarterback was a huge problem last year. If you had, Sal Powell said it on the show, I echoed it as well. If you had average quarterback play last year, mediocre quarterback play last year, this team probably would have won 3-4 extra games. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Lot to dive into. Got the latest on Ben Simmons. The Flyers continue to make moves. You could check that out on our website, 973ESPN.com. I'm Mike Gill. Good to be back. Brought to you by Matt Blatt Nissan. The all-new Matt Blatt Nissan now open Black Horse Pike in Egg Harbor Township next to Home Depot. Online, mattblattnissan.com. Phils, what are you doing? How has it gotten to this? Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. Don't forget, watch the show live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. Just search 973 ESPN. Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City for his conversation on a Wednesday joins me next. All right, 2:39 on a Wednesday. So much going on. We obviously know that the Eagles are back. We know the Phillies are in action today. We'll have the latest on what they can do, what they need to do. Got the NBA draft tomorrow, too, by the way. This Aaron Rodgers press conference, that was riveting as well. The Phillies play the Nationals tonight at 7 o'clock. We'll have more on that around the trade deadline. Let's bring Mike McGarry in from the Press of Atlantic City, who was on his way to the ballpark because they're anticipating possibly some news happening today. Mike, would you anticipate the Phillies tried yesterday to make a trade? I guess there was some sort of snafu that happened that prevented that from happening. But do you anticipate something happening between now and the time this game starts tonight?
Something better happen in the next couple of days, right? Because the Phillies have a shot at this division. I've often said they're a flawed team chasing a flawed team in the New York Mets, but the Phillies need some pitching desperately. So something better happen, and we only have today, tomorrow, and Friday for it to happen. So something got to happen soon if the Phillies hope to break this postseason drought.
Right. They tried for Tyler Anderson. They had a deal in place. One of the Phillies players apparently did not pass the physical. And now it appears they're in on John Gray. Do you think starting pitching has now become the top target for this team? It was bullpen, but has the starting pitching now taken over as number one issue?
I think it has in the past 10 days just because of what you've seen, right? The last two Matt Moore starts, including last night, you've been down, 7-2 a couple of days ago. You were down 6-1 last night. You had Vinny Velasquez be non-competitive last Saturday. So if you're going to try to get a playoff spot, you can't have two pitchers in your rotation not give you a chance to win. So what they're looking for in Tyler Anderson, in John Gray, they're not shooting for the moon here. They're not shooting for Max Scherzer, right? Small request. Just give me a pitcher who can go out there for 5 innings, maybe 6 if we're lucky, and give us a chance to win the game. That's all we're looking for here. We're not asking for Bob Gibson to take them out. We're just looking for somebody to go out there and throw 5 competitive innings, 6 if it's a good day.
Yeah, it seems that, you're hearing stuff like Craig Kimbrell, Rodriguez from the Pirates. Like, yeah, if they can get that closer and make a deal work, maybe they will. But they have now turned their attention to figuring out what to do in the back end of that Phillies starting rotation here. What about making that big move? Is that something that they should do as well? Or is this, hey, you got to go find 2 starting pitchers, forget about the back end of the bullpen, worry about that later? Or if you could get Craig Kimbrell, Mike, would you say you got to pull the trigger?
Yeah, if you can get a bullpen guy, a closer like Craig Kimbrell, and it's not going to cost you an elite prospect, which Dave Dombrowski said they're not in a position where they want to part with elite prospects yet. And of course, it's an even debate to ask yourself if the Phillies have any elite prospects in the minors. If you can get a bullpen guy like that, that's fine. Ranger Suarez has done okay in that back end of the bullpen, but the immediate need is you got to find a guy who can get you out of the second inning before you worry who's going to pitch the 8th or 9th inning now. So bullpen always a priority for any contending team. But I think the biggest priority right now is the number 4 and 5 starter.
Yeah, last night Bryce Harper said, Mike, the offense can't keep getting down and trying to dig us out of these situations. I mean, that's the first kind of, I don't want to say shot, but realization that the offensive players are beginning to get frustrated by the fact that their pitching has let them down because it seems that they think they have a playoff-worthy offense.
Well, they do. Or they have had since the All-Star break. The first half of the season, maybe not so much, but since the All-Star break, they have done a better job of hitting the baseball and have been able to out-hit some of their mistakes. So, Bryce is exactly right. You're only going to have so many nights like you had on Monday, I guess it was, when McCutchen hits the walk-off home run. You only have, you're down 4-0 in that game. You come back and win that game. You're only going to have so many of those nights. It's not realistic to expect the offense and the Phillies hitters to fall behind 4, 5, 6 runs and then mount a comeback every game. It's not going to happen. So the offense has proven itself since the All-Star break to be viable, to kind of be maybe what it was we thought it would be when the season began. But you can't fall down 4, 5, 6 runs every night and expect to hit your way back into the game. Once a week, maybe. 7 days a week, absolutely not.
Yeah, they're down 6-0 last night, and obviously they tried to get back in that game, just couldn't do it. And look, I know Matt Moore gives up 2 3-run homers, Mike, but another thing is, I just got done playing with 13-year-olds. If they made some of the plays Gregorius made, I had to sit them.
Yeah, well, Didi Gregorius is a big problem, and that's when we talk about maybe, what do you do with the Phillies core and maybe some off-season moves, but you cannot go through another season with Didi Gregorius. First of all, hitting the way he's hitting, he's slumping. I think he's batting, below 200 since he returned from the injury. He's been shaky defensively all season. If Alec Boehm is out there at third and Didi Gregorius is out there at short, every time a ground ball is hit to the left side of the infield, you're kind of holding your breath and covering your eyes because you're afraid of what's going to happen. You can't go through another season of that. That's probably a question that's got to be solved in the offseason. But you're exactly right. You're fighting uphill on so many avenues here, and you can't expect the offense to overcome bad starting pitching, bad defense, and a bad bullpen. Give the offense a hand and fix one of those things by Friday.
Couple things. There's so much with this team, man. You wrote about this the other day. I was out, but Sir Anthony Dominguez apparently, is he a guy that the Phillies say, look, if we can hang around, we might get some help with him. I mean, he hasn't pitched in almost 3 years.
Yeah, I think it's you're absolutely right. I think it's closer to 2, or it's about 2 years. Just the fact that I think that they're trying to, get him back. We entered the ballpark yesterday. He was pitching a game there. Just the fact that they're trying to get Sir Anthony back for September. And he had the Tommy John surgery last July. So a year later, 13 months later, it's not unreasonable that a guy could come back from Tommy John surgery and pitch. But just the fact that they're trying to maybe get him back and add him to the bullpen says what they think about the bullpen. If he does come back, what kind of expectations can we have? We're going to have modest expectations for a guy who has pitched in 2 years. I don't think you're going to see him in the 9th inning saving games, but if he could come back and help you get through the 5th, the 6th, maybe the 7th, I mean, the Phillies will take any sort of pitching help they can get at this point.
Yep. Is John Gray, does that do anything for you? If you can get John Gray, do you say, okay, that move gets you closer?
Yeah, I do. And you know why I do, Mike? Because look at the team you're chasing. The New York Mets, they're not exactly the big red machine or the 27 Yankees, right? They pitched Jared Eichhoff last night, and he gave up about, I think it was 100 runs in 2 innings. They threw Rich Hill, who 4 or 5 years ago was pitching for the Long Island Ducks. They pitched him on Sunday. So, you're chasing a team that kind of has your problems. If you can fix that problem, I go ahead and do it. So I know the names Tyler Anderson and John Gray, don't excite fans, and we're not going to be having John Gray days, right? Happy that he's on the mound. But if you can get a guy who can throw, again, we're not asking for Warren Spahn here. 5 innings, maybe 6 on a good day, just so when we turn the TV before we settle in our chair, you're not looking at a team down 6-0, right? I mean, give the offense a chance to win.
Real quick, you mentioned Boehm before and the defensive issues there. What's the plan with him? I mean, Torreyes, I'm not sitting here. You're not going to have a Ronald Torreyes day either. But do you take him out of the lineup?
At this point, I don't. I think what Ronald Torreyes is giving you offensively and defensively is better than what you're getting from Alec Boehm. So I think you stay with Torreyes. Boehm is a guy that I'm not ready to give up on yet because of his youth. Maybe he can figure out some of his issues. But again, the Phillies have a lot of problems, right? You mentioned shortstop, third base. Hoskins defensively at first, McCutchen in left field having a good year, but aging, his contract is up. What are we going to do in center field? Back of the rotation, bullpen. There's a lot of issues. Somehow they're still in a playoff race. I think you do what you can to maybe get through this playoff race. And then when the offseason comes, Alec Boehm, all the things we talked about, they're at the top of the list that you have to fix going into next season.
I wonder, Mike,
Yes.
if they use Bohm in these discussions. Is that something they would think about doing, or are they not at that point yet?
Yeah, at this point, I don't give up on Alec Bohm. I think what you saw from him last year had some promise. Maybe a position change for him. Maybe he's having a sophomore slump. I don't think you give up on him yet. I find it hard to believe, and again, haven't talked to him about this, but I find it hard to believe that his defensive problems are not carrying over to his offensive performances, especially that he's not a veteran player. He's a young player. You know, think about it. If you were really struggling at third base, it's hard to imagine that that's not going to be on your mind when you come to the plate. So, you know, I would be hesitant to give up on him. I would almost say, let's see what he does next year, and then we'll make a better informed decision on him. But as for right now, I'm trying to get in the playoffs. I'm playing Ronald Torreyes over Alec Bohm, you know, 4 or 5 days a week, no question about it.
All right, Mike McGarry, Press of Atlantic City. His must-win column appears on Fridays in the Press of Atlantic City. Let's transition to the Sixers. The draft's tomorrow night. A lot of speculation that the Sixers will move Ben Simmons. In fact, it's being reported that it's increasingly likely that they will move Ben Simmons. So give me a Mike McGarry dissertation on where we stand with Ben Simmons.
Well, I don't think he's going to be moved around this draft. I don't think the Sixers have the draft capital to sort of – it's not like the Sixers have, you know, the top 3 picks and they can offer that to a team. And plus, I think the number one target that they're looking for is obviously Dame Lillard. And Dame Lillard is off in Tokyo right now for Team USA. So if the Portland Trailblazers are going to trade Dame Lillard, they're not going to do it without talking to Dame Lillard or having Dame Lillard, you know, intimately involved in that decision. So I agree 100%. Ben Simmons is going in the offseason, but it's going to be a complicated deal, and I don't think it's going to happen, you know, in the next couple of days or so. But I agree 100% that Ben Simmons is going in the off season, but I just don't think it's going to happen around the draft.
Do you have any reservations if you're Daryl Morey? Now, 3 teams that have been identified are the Heat, Raptors, and Wizards. Well, they all have something in common. You face them a lot, and they are in the Eastern Conference. Do you have any problem with that?
I would have a little bit of a problem with it. I mean, obviously, if I could trade Ben Simmons out west where I only have to see him twice a season, I would. But if I can get a quality all-star player back for him, you know, I wouldn't let that make the hold up the deal, basically. Because what do you play, the Western teams twice? What do you play, the Eastern teams 4 times? So at that point, I'm not going to let that hold me up, basically.
I mean, you play Miami or Washington, or the Raptors, you know, these are teams that you get stuck in a playoff series against one of those. And I know Ben might be an issue in terms of offensively, but he comes in with some motivation to shut somebody down defensively, and that could change a playoff series.
Yeah, you know, obviously that's a good point. You don't want to see him in the playoffs either, but, you know, I've also seen him play in the fourth quarter on offense in the playoffs, and I might want to see him in that situation. So, you know, I might want to see the Ben Simmons that only took 6 shots in the playoffs in the fourth quarter of a 7-game series. So the flip side is also viable there too.
All right, Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. Minute and a half. Howie Roseman did a good job, bad job, indifferent job this offseason as we enter camp.
I think he did a good job. I think he added some much-needed pieces, but it was a good job, but it's not going to be enough to get the Eagles to the playoffs. I still see a team that won 4 games last year. Even with the improvements, I see a team that's going to win 6 or 7 games this year. So I give him a good job. He added some pieces, but kind of limited by what was there from the beginning.
All right. Do you know what you're writing about for Friday yet?
I actually do. It'll be interesting. You mentioned the Eagles. We're going to sort of take a look at whether or not all this talk, should the Eagles even be thinking about trading for Deshaun Watson, you know, sort of my take on, you know, the adding Deshaun Watson debate. So that'll be online tomorrow and in the paper on Friday.
Okay, make sure you check that out. Follow Mike at AC Press McGarry. And, of course, he, like all guests here on the Sports Bash, brought to you by Matt Blatt Kia. Matt Blatt, they want to get you approved today, 6211 Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township. All right, Mike, thanks, man. I'll talk to you Friday.
All right, perfect time, Mike. Just about to head over the Walt Whitman Bridge, so thanks for the company on the ride.
You got it, man. Yes, I drove that bridge last night as I was making my way home. I actually took a little detour over before we got to the bridge and stopped down there on Oregon Avenue. I think you know where I stopped if I was on Oregon Avenue last night, right? Yep, made that stop on the way home last night. Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. That's Mike McGarry. We really enjoy having this partnership that Mike and I have come up with 3 times a week. Go back and forth. I think it's a lot of fun. He gets us from different perspectives, some fun stuff. Hope you enjoy that segment we'll have for the football season as well. If you're watching the show, greetings to you. If you're listening on the radio, thank you for that. If you have us on the free mobile app, which you can download at 973ESPN.com/app, it's easy to do in the Apple Store or Google Play. You can text us through the free mobile app. Just open up your app and hit the text us function, and we'll get that text message read as well. So plenty of ways to get to us. But coming up next, I want to dive back into the birds. Here we go on a Wednesday, hour number 2, Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. I'm your host, Mike Gill. What's up, dude? I know, where am I at? I've lost track of the days, the time, where we're going, but I do know the Eagles are back, and that I'm actually excited about. This is like an invigorating feeling. Like, I was not a fan of Doug Peterson getting fired. Like, I didn't think that was necessary, but I do kind of feel the shot in the arm from the new head coach here, Nick Sirianni. I thought he did a great job today speaking to the media. I thought it just got the blood flowing a little bit that football was back. And if you don't have high expectations for this Eagles team, it's understandable. I'm not telling you you're nuts. But hearing him and seeing the new faces out there, I think Howie Roseman did a pretty solid job considering the handcuffs that, look, some of the handcuffs were given to him by his own doing. But I thought he did a pretty good job this offseason of cleaning up a little bit of the mess and getting some of the things fixed that they had issues with. What were some of the things that they had problems with last year? Well, they didn't have a corner. Their cornerback situation was a disaster. A lot of that had to do with injury, but they did not have a good starting corner. They went into the season last year with Avonte Maddox playing on the outside. Not good enough. They have upgraded there. They went in last season with Nate Geary playing linebacker. Not good enough. They have upgraded there. They went into last season with Jalen Mills moving from corner to safety, which I said, all right, I'll give that a chance. I didn't rip it. I didn't say it was a horrible decision. I said, I'll give that a chance. They have upgraded there. They added Ryan Kerrigan. That is an upgrade over what they had in that position last year. The injuries that they had last year were so much to overcome, but they upgraded in the areas where they had deficiencies. Number 2 corner, which also made the slot corner a deficiency. They've upgraded slot corner. They've upgraded number 2 corner. They've upgraded their safety spot. They've upgraded their linebacker spot. And they've upgraded their rotational defensive player with Ryan Kerrigan essentially taking over for Vinny Curry. So I think the Eagles' defense has upgraded all of the problems. Are they great upgrades? That remains to be seen. Is Anthony Harris going to come in and be the Anthony Harris that he was from the Minnesota Vikings circa 2019? Probably not. That remains to be seen, though. If he is, you've got a pretty good player. You know, people forget that that Anthony Harris played for Jonathan Gannon. Jonathan Gannon was the secondary coach in Minnesota. He knew Anthony Harris. They handpicked Anthony Harris. And Anthony Harris had his best season conveniently while playing in Minnesota. Anthony Harris is a guy in 2019 that got the franchise tag placed on him. You don't just throw the franchise tag at somebody. Why did he get the franchise tag? Well, he had 60 tackles and 6 interceptions. He broke up 11 passes. He was pretty flipping good. What happened last year was the Vikings defense wasn't very good. Anthony Harris can be a very reputable safety if that front 4 gets pressure. Guess what? What does the Eagles front 4 do? They get pressure. So I look around this defense and I see a defense that's essentially upgraded every single spot that was deficient last year. Did they get all pros? No. Did they get Pro Bowlers? Not necessarily, but they're better. And what did we talk about before? If you're simply better, you can compete. They were not competitive at times last year because they just didn't have NFL caliber players. But Brandon Graham, Derek Barnett, Josh Sweat, and Ryan Kerrigan, that's a front 4 that most teams in this league said, I'll go into week 1 with. Fletcher Cox and Javon Hargrave is a duo at defensive tackles that almost every single team in this league would say, I'll take those 2. In fact, I'm not sure there's a better duo in the league. Yeah, Aaron Donald might be better than Fletcher Cox, but Fletcher Cox and Javon Hargrave together, how many duos in the league would you say are better than those 2? Not many. Eric Wilson and Alex Singleton, they're okay. They're nothing special. That's an area they need to be better. They're going to be better, I think, than they were last year, but they're not great. No one's sitting here pretending that Alex Singleton and Eric Wilson are a great tandem at linebacker, because they're not. Can one of them surprise? Maybe. But yes, Nate Gary was awful last year. I mean, teams were literally targeting Nate Gary last year, and it cost you multiple games because he simply was not a competitive linebacker. So Wilson and Singleton are certain upgrades over what you had. And remember, last year the Eagles linebackers were such a problem up until about the Baltimore game. And after that, we didn't sit here and single out how bad the linebackers were anymore because they kind of got it together. Singleton and Edwards kind of got it together a little bit. The problem they have is they're not playmakers. They don't get to the quarterback. They're not guys that drop back in coverage. Now, Wilson can drop back in coverage. Singleton's just okay. I mean, he makes the tackles. He's a good tackler. Wilson's not great against the run. He's better against the pass, but they've upgraded that position, no question. Obviously, they're better at corner now with Steve Nelson. That's not even a question. Darius Slay and Steve Nelson are probably the best tandem in the conference. I mean, in the division. Sorry. They're probably the best tandem in the division. And that's not saying a lot because Dallas is dreadful. New York's not very good either. Bradbury's all right over there, I guess. I take that back. New York's okay. But Darius Slay and Steve Nelson are probably the best duo inside the NFC East. And then Harris and McLeod are both solid safeties. They've done a good job of finding the deficiencies on that side of the ball and upgrading them. Go over to the offensive side of the ball, and it's the similar story. They are going to be better at every position on the offensive line, and a lot of that's because of injury. They're going to be better at right tackle because Lane Johnson's better than whoever played right tackle last year. They're going to be better at right guard because Brandon Brooks is better than everybody that played there last year. Jason Kelsey's back. Sayamala, who apparently has an injury, is not ready to go at training camp. And whoever plays left tackle, you would imagine, is better than they were last year if Jordan Mailata gets the job. And if Andre Dillard beats him out, then he's better. So your offensive line is significantly better than last year across the board. Dallas Goedert and Zach Ertz, that story is something to keep an eye on. I don't know how they're going to play this. I would imagine Goddard is now the number one and Ertz is now the number two, which is kind of interesting if you really think about it. Like, is Ertz just all of a sudden pushed aside, or does he go out there and show, hey, I'm the best tight end in the history of the franchise, and the only reason I wasn't very good last year is because I was hurt. You need to play me more. I'm not saying he's going to demand to be played more, but I'm saying will his skill set show the coaches that, man, this guy's still pretty darn good. Something to keep an eye on. Devonta Smith, Jalen Reagor I don't think practiced today. I think he had a problem, a little bit of an injury issue, which is disheartening because he had injury issues last year as well. Right? And Travis Fulgham is the guy that I have the most intrigue by at camp this year. Him and J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, I guess, are the two guys that I have the most intrigue with. I think J.J. Arcega-Whiteside is running out of time, and I definitely think that that's something to keep an eye on. What did they make the decision that he is now done? 609-403-0973. Text messages, keep them coming. If you're watching the show live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, keep your messages coming. And if you're listening on the free mobile app, tap the app, hit the text us button, and we'll read off your text messages that are coming in from the app messages. So they have upgraded essentially in every single spot on the offense. The one question is, did they upgrade at quarterback? Fair or unfair to ask? Totally fair, obviously. Did they upgrade at quarterback? From the guy that played last year, they had to. I'm an upgrade at quarterback over the guy that played last year. So Jalen Hurts has to be better than the guy who played last year. And if he's not, you're in real trouble. If he's not, this season's going to be a long one. But every other area, I told you in the first segment of the show, the Eagles' actions this offseason were, we can compete. That was their actions. That was the message from Howie Roseman. Whether he said it, whether he came out and said, hey, we're going to be better. Well, yeah, you won 4 games last year. Of course you're going to be better. And if you're not, major changes need to happen. But the messaging was, we're better. Look at our moves. We're better. Look at what we did. We're better. Look who we have now. We upgraded in all those areas that I just said were deficient. We're back healthy on the offensive line. We added 2 playmakers this offseason. Really, if you think about it, Devonta Smith, Jalen Reagor didn't play hardly at all last year. He was just kind of there. Almost a waste of a season for him. And theoretically, you're getting back Zach Ertz. I mean, we didn't anticipate that he would be here. I don't think anybody did. So is Jalen Hurts the answer at quarterback? We're about to find out. He's got the offensive line in front of him. He's got some playmakers that should help him out. Is Nick Sirianni the play designer that this team has been lacking maybe? I thought Peterson did a terrible job with Jalen Reagor last year. Sorry to say. Thought he did a terrible job. Thought he did a terrible job with Miles Sanders the last couple of seasons. Terrible. Terrible. He was your best playmaker. He didn't touch the ball enough. They didn't do a good enough job with him. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Terry from Galloway says the Cowboys in Washington got better at quarterback, so they'll be better teams. I think we've echoed that many times. I think Dallas right now with Dak back is the best team in the division. Offensively, their defense is not very good, but should be better with a new defensive coordinator. I'll give them that. I think Washington is the best defensive team in the league, in the division. And yes, they are better at quarterback with Ryan Fitzpatrick, although we all like to anoint Ryan Fitzpatrick every team he goes to that he's great, and yet I don't know that Ryan Fitzpatrick has started a playoff game in his life. So yes, I agree with you. Dallas and Washington both should be considered better teams than Philadelphia. He goes on to say, Terry of Galloway, I'm feeling good about this Eagles team, man. I think Hurts and Mayfield have comparable skill sets, serviceable players that can make some plays. It is not unusual, in the immortal words of Tom Jones, to feel some sort of optimism at the start of a training camp, right? It is very common to say, hey, at the start of training camp, I feel better than maybe I did yesterday or the day before. Because once they get out there and the blood, the juices started flowing, it is a different feel. And I've been saying this all offseason, though. I didn't need to wait to get to training camp. I think people are looking at Philadelphia just so disappointed by last year and saying this team isn't going to be very good. Somebody texts in, do I really think the Eagles' corners are better than the Giants? I added the Giants in there. I said the Giants have Bradbury. He's pretty good. I gave him that. The duo, Adoree Jackson, is he the other guy for New York? Is Adoree Jackson still the other? It's Bradbury and Jackson, right? They're the two guys. As a duo, I like Bradbury. I said that. I'm sure the listener conveniently left out the fart. The fart. Sorry. Yes, the gentleman listening left out that fart. Left out the part where I said that Bradbury's very good. I like Bradbury. I'm not a big Adoree Jackson guy, however. He's okay. He got cut by the Titans. It was a nice pickup, I guess, but it shows you that they needed help. The Giants needed help over that. Jackson was hurt last year. He barely played. And he barely played the year before he got hurt. He hasn't had a good year, Adoree Jackson, in 3-4 seasons. So, no, I think the Eagles duo is better. I mean, Bradbury, is he better than Slay? I mean, I know Slay didn't have a great year last year, so that's a tough one. But as a duo, am I missing somebody is there somebody from the Giants? I know they signed Jackson. I'm trying to think. Is there somebody that I missed? That the listener seems to be trying to play gotcha with me, but I mentioned James Bradberry. I think he's very good. I don't know that I like him better than Slay. I think he had a better year than Slay. He's younger than Slay. But am I going to say that Jackson and Slay are – I mean, Jackson and Bradberry are better than Slay and Nelson? I'd probably go with Slay and Nelson. That's just me. It's a bad division. That's what I will say. Sports Bash. 97.3 ESPN with Indeed Instant Match. Just sponsor and post and immediately receive a short list of qualified candidates whose resumes on Indeed match your job description. Visit Indeed.com/credit for more details. Did I explain that well enough for you? I heard you say that, but you're still putting the Birds ahead of us. Yes, I will take Slay and Nelson over Bradberry and Jackson. That's what I would say. Yes, I would have ranked Eagles, 2 corners. The division of corners are terrible. This division has terrible corners. Overall, that's the message here, right? That's the overall. James Bradberry's very good. Adoree Jackson's he's just a guy. And not a healthy one at that. Right? Am I right about that? He's just a guy. That's my opinion anyway. Adoree Jackson's been a little bit of a disappointment, and he's been hurt. Am I selling Washington short? I don't think so. Their secondary is not very good either. All right, back with more Sports Bash. On the other side, Ben Simmons. Will he stay or will he go? It seems imminent that the Sixers will move him. Is it accurate? Our Sixers insider, Paul Hudrick, next. All right, 322. NBA draft tomorrow night. Who knew? Just jammed in there, right? NBA free agency. Everything is underway. You got NHL free agency. You got Sixers. You got Eagles camp. You got the Phillies. I don't know what they're doing. They're going to try to make a trade. You get the trade deadline for baseball Friday, free agency for hockey today, and basketball's draft tomorrow night. This is Sam Hinkie's dream, drafting, free agency, trade deadlines, all in the same week. Paul Hudrick is here from 97.3 ESPN.com. And what's going on, Paul? How are you?
I'm doing great, Mike. How are you, man?
Man, I was just off a couple days. I came back, and I was like, man, the trade deadline, the free agency, the draft, this is fantastic. There's a lot going on, but I feel like every 2 seconds I get a new alert on my phone that Ben Simmons will not be here. Do you think that is becoming increasingly obvious? You've been around this team a lot, and you may have sources on this or have heard stuff, but is it becoming increasingly obvious that Ben Simmons will be moved?
I still think it's going to come down to what they get. I don't think – I mean, we've all seen some of these reports out there, that Toronto is appearing to be a team that's very interested in Ben Simmons. But if the you saw the reported offer that the Sixers wanted from them, and it was a lot. And I think that's the deal. Like, if you want if you're not giving the Sixers Dame Lillard or Bradley Beal or someone in that ilk, someone of that ilk, you're not getting Ben Simmons unless you blow them away with an offer. So I don't think it's as simple as they're ready to move on and they want to trade him and they need to trade him. I think it's sure he's out there, he's available. They're clearly listening and they're clearly talking to plenty of people about him. But I still think it boils down to they're going to have to get extremely good value. And I think all the rumors and everything you're seeing, that has been the most consistent thing, is that they are not going to trade him unless they are getting all-star talent in return.
Woj just 1 minute ago tweeting that the Sixers continue to canvass the league for Ben Simmons trades, armed with a steep asking price. Simmons and his agent, Clutch CEO Rich Paul, are in step with a move elsewhere. Draft night is always ideal vehicle for a deal, but talks could continue into the summer. Now, when you hear that the agent is now, they're in step with a move elsewhere, is that the next step of saying, hey, maybe it's a better for everybody if we just move on?
I think it's agent, and with all due respect to Rich Paul, is very good at what he does. I think it's agent speak to basically say, oh yeah, you're going to trade me? Yeah, we're totally on board with that. I mean, that's just to help the players' value, to help the players standing in the league. Because look, the reality is Ben Simmons' value right now and his stature around the league is the lowest it has been ever since he's been a rookie in this league. He's been the brunt of jokes in regular in local and national media. Some fair, some pretty, maybe a little bit borderline out of bounds. But the reality is he's not viewed in a lot of circles the way he once was. So if you're Rich Paul and you're Ben Simmons and you're his camp, you don't want to make it look like, oh, well, the Sixers are getting rid of me. You want to make it look like, oh, yeah, we're totally on board. A fresh start is good for the Sixers and it's great for us. So to me, that's what that is. That's agent speak. And I don't think that influences anything either way. And the other thing, because I didn't see that from Woj, so thank you for letting me know, is that,
just 1 minute ago, man, I can't expect
it's crazy
at one time.
but the way he phrased that to say, it could go into the summer, because I think it's, if you're Daryl Morey, why are you going to pull the trigger on a sub-optimal value package when Dame Lillard's future seems very rocky? Bradley Beal's future seems pretty rocky. Why are you going to make a deal with Toronto and not get a player like one of those guys when, you know what I mean? Like, why would you accept that lower value when you can wait, have a little patience? Maybe the draft night, maybe that does play out. But if it doesn't, what does it hurt to wait? To me, that's the big thing. Is I am all about patience. I think that's the way to go, because you don't want to pull the trigger on a trade with a team like Toronto, and then a month later, Bradley Beal or Dame Lillard are demanding out of their respective teams.
What do you make of, those moves? Toronto, it's being reported Toronto Miami, and who's the other Eastern Conference team?
Wizards.
They're interested. Do you think Daryl Morey is interested in trading in the conference?
To me, it doesn't matter. You get value where you get value. I don't think you necessarily look at it like that. Now, maybe when you're talking about the higher, like, are they going to make a deal with the Bucks? Probably not. Are they going to make a deal with the Nets? Probably not. The Celtics, like some of those teams, maybe not. You don't make a big deal with those. But like a team like the Wizards, if the Wizards are trading Bradley Beal, they're blowing things up. So you're not worried about them, challenging you, at least not in the near future. Now, maybe it comes back to bite you 6 years from now and Ben Simmons becomes the player many expected him to be. But if I'm Daryl Morey, I'd have zero hesitation about dealing with the Raptors or the Wizards at this point. If it's a move that is going to make you better, if it's a move that has a chance to make you a title contender right now, I don't think you can worry about what it's going to do for the other team. You have to worry about yourself. If it makes you better, you pull the trigger. You can't be worried about that.
Okay. Obviously, if it's Washington, Beal. Well, Toronto, there was a lot of stuff the last couple of days about Toronto. The number 4 pick. I think Van Vliet's name is mentioned in there. Does that deal interest you, Toronto?
It doesn't not interest me, I guess is the best way to put it. Because I guess it depends on what you view with that number 4 pick. Like if you think you could turn that number 4 pick eventually, I mean, they're going to have to draft a player if they do trade for him. But if you think you could possibly move that player, like if you remember years ago when LeBron went to the Cavs and they drafted Wiggins, number 1 overall, and they eventually moved Wiggins for Kevin Love. Something like that is possible. So maybe if you do a trade like that with Toronto, you have that number 4 pick, whether it's a Jalen Suggs or a Jonathan Kuminga or one of those kind of guys, you have a team that might be interested in one of those guys that you could trade. Like, would Washington be interested perhaps in a Jonathan Kuminga or a Jalen Suggs if they're moving on for Bradley Beal? Sure. Why wouldn't they be? So if that's the end game, it appeals to me a little bit. A guy like Van Vliet, I think, would be a tremendous fit here. A guy who can create off the dribble, a guy who can hit outside shots, who's a tough-minded player, tough-nosed player. He certainly helped them here. But to me, I still go back to that. I'm holding out. If that's the best thing which it might not be the best thing to get, but if that's the best thing I can get on draft night, I'd probably pass. I probably hold out and hope I can get a hold of one of those other guys that I mentioned.
What's the connection with Miami?
I see absolutely none. Makes zero sense to me. It Mike, in any capacity, it makes no sense. I do think that narrative, that rhetoric of, Jimmy Butler, Ben Simmons not liking each other, I think that's overblown. I don't even look at it like that. I look at it as, okay, so if you're trading him to Miami and the goal is to keep Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo, that gives you 3 guys in your starting lineup that don't take threes. Because Jimmy doesn't take threes and he doesn't do it at a high clip. Bam Adebayo also does not. And you're going to add Ben Simmons to that mix. So I don't really get that. I don't know how you can make it work contractually without including Jimmy Butler, which, again, makes little sense. Why would the Heat move Jimmy Butler right now? And then lastly, I just don't how would think about Ben Simmons and his personality. And this isn't a knock on Ben Simmons, but do you really think Ben Simmons would be all about that whole Heat culture thing? Like, I don't see him being a fit there. Like, I don't see it on the court. I don't see it off the court. I don't see it financially. It makes zero sense. And I saw even Sam Amick kind of pump the brakes on that a little bit and kind of softened on that because I do not see a fit with the Miami Heat at all.
Yeah, that one's interesting. Obviously the Portland thing seems to be you're just kind of waiting, right? You're playing the waiting game with them. So that's why, to me, hearing that, it's like, it's becoming more and more possible. The 3 teams that are mentioned there. Now, we know other teams have some interest that we've heard, but those teams, Indiana, Minnesota, I think we've all kind of come to terms with whatever they're offering. The Sixers aren't going to, Sacramento, that stuff, that doesn't seem to be something that they're going to be interested. Like, there's not a deal that makes sense for the magnitude of Ben Simmons with those mid-level teams.
No, not unless you're including a third team. That's the only way you're going to do that because that's great that the Minnesota Timberwolves would like to have Ben Simmons, but I don't see any player on that other than maybe Anthony Edwards, who was the number 1 overall pick last year. But first of all, I don't know why Minnesota would do it. Second of all, he's very young and it probably doesn't fit the timeline. And any of those teams, I don't see where the trade fits. Now, if we're circling back, to me, the two teams that I'm keeping the biggest eye on, Toronto, just because there's just been so much smoke around Toronto, and Washington, just because there's so much smoke right now around Bradley Beal and the rumors around him. Now, Mike, let me throw this scenario out there that I don't have any sources on this. I'm not reporting anything, but just the idea of it. What if you got in a 3-team trade with Toronto, with the Wizards, where you end up with Bradley Beal and you sign and trade for Kyle Lowry? That is not an impossible scenario to happen. And imagine a backcourt of Kyle Lowry and Bradley Beal to play with Ben Simmons. It doesn't even matter who the other 2 guys on the court are if you have those 3 guys. So to me, knowing Daryl Morey's history and what he's done and the things he's done over the years, you cannot rule any of this. There might be a 4-team trade where maybe you get the Lakers involved and Westbrook goes over to the Lakers. Like, who knows with this guy? Like, it's like Doctor Strange in the Marvel universe. Like, this guy has a million scenarios already played out in his head about what could happen, about where it could happen. So I think if you're a Sixers fan, I don't think you should worry that Daryl Morey is not going to get proper value for Ben Simmons, because I believe that he will, and I think that's why the process has kind of been dragged out a little bit and why it is taking a little longer than maybe some people would like.
Yeah. What do you make of the Lowry stuff?
It's interesting because I know with the sign and trade, the hard cap makes that a tricky situation. We don't have enough time to go over the CBA and all that and what it means, but basically it means
just explain to the listeners. They just can't go out and sign Kyle Lowry.
No, not at all. Like, it has to be a sign and trade. And then if it's a sign and trade, you're hard cap, which basically means you kind of can't do anything else. Like, you're done. Like, that's it. And it would make it really hard to make trades in the future. It would just put them in a really tough spot. Now, with that said, could you perhaps move? I don't know. If you move Ben Simmons and you don't take back as much money wise, could that clear some space? If you do a sign and trade with Ben Simmons and then possibly also move Tobias Harris, could that clear? Like, you'd almost have to move money one way or another. You have 3 max contracts. So you'd almost have to move money in order to make it work. If you were able to get Kyle Lowry at the trade deadline, that would have made it a lot easier, and that would have fit into the cap a lot nicer because you already would have had his bird rights and you would have had a much easier time sliding him in. But with the sign and trade, it makes it really complicated and really tricky. So while it's certainly not impossible, but in order to do that, you almost have to move both Ben Simmons and Tobias Harris in order to kind of make that work so you're not completely hamstringing yourself.
Any NBA draft thought? I know the Sixers at 28 are not, but there have been various reports that people feel that they will not pick and that they will do something with that pick to try to get better.
It would not surprise me to move that pick. I mean, that seems to be, again, a lot of smoke around that. I've seen 3 different people that I trust report that. I know Tom Moore just wrote an interesting piece where he suggested the idea of Cam Reddish the 28th pick plus for Cam Reddish, because the Hawks are in a tough spot because they can't sign everyone, and they have a lot of guys who are going to be owed a lot of money in the upcoming years. Cam Reddish would intrigue the hell out of me as a guy who I think is already a pretty good defensive player and has some offensive upside. So I would be intrigued by that. And I think he's a guy that can help you now, and if you keep him, could possibly develop into more. You can kind of get a feel for that. Other than that, yeah, I mean, it would make sense to trade for veteran help of some kind. If they don't, there are some players I really like around that 28 range. I know Trey Mann has been a guy from Florida that a lot of people have talked about. Kind of reminds me of D'Angelo Russell a little bit. So the idea of a D'Angelo Russell that you can bring off the bench and not have to pay a max contract to, that could be a player that could be very useful. Bones Highland from VCU is very intriguing to me. He's a tough kid. He is audacious. He is not afraid to shoot it from anywhere. I think the Sixers could use some more of that. A guy like Miles McBride from West Virginia. I mean, there are guys that I think
I like that.
There are guys who I think could intrigue them at 28 if they hang on to the pick. But if they can get veteran help or a veteran player, I think that's the right move, because you're not developing guys. You're trying to win right now. And so I think if you can get a guy that can help you, you got to pull the trigger on it.
At Paul Hudrick, the Sixers draft tomorrow night. Obviously, Ben Simmons. We got the Summer League schedule. That has been released. There is a lot of hoops happening. We'll keep you up to date. At Paul Hudrick, follow him on Twitter. And he was kind enough to join us under short notice today. Thank you, Paul.
You got him, Mike. Anytime, man.
Yeah, man. Paul Hudrick here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, brought to you by Matt Blatt Nissan, the all-new Matt Blatt Nissan. Open on the Black Horse Pike in Egg Harbor Township next to Home Depot. Online, mattblattnissan.com. And when we come back, yes, it's like Christmas Day out there. The Flyers are making moves. They have signed 2 players today. They signed a player over the week, over the last couple of days. They've made multiple trades. Chuck Fletcher is really changing the complexity of this roster. So, how is he doing? Our Flyers insider, Kevin Durso, has the details at 973ESPN.com, and he is set to join me next here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. All right, 3:43 here on a Wednesday. Kevin Durso covers the Flyers for 97.3 ESPN.com. And the Flyers have had quite a busy week or so here. It all kind of started last week, and it has trickled into the first day of NHL free agency, where they've made a couple of moves today. So let's recap it all with 97.3 ESPN.com Flyers insider Kevin Durso, who joins us now here on the Sports Bash. Durso, what's going on, man?
How you doing, Mike? It's been a busy few days, to say the least.
It sure has. Today, NHL free agency tipped off at 12, and the Flyers got right into the fray. They replaced Brian Elliott, who, by the way, signed with Tampa. So the Moose is loose in Florida. Who is replacing him here in Philadelphia?
So the signing is Martin Jones. He was bought out by the San Jose Sharks yesterday, so he cleared waivers, was able to be signed as a free agent. So he comes in. He was on a 1-year, $2 million deal. It seems like there's a lot of goaltenders around the league that have shuffled places at this point, and everything seems to be kind of, for the most part, this low-risk deal in terms of term. It's not long-term stuff. We're seeing 1- and 2-year deals a lot. We're seeing term that's in the range of anything from what Brian Elliott got, which was a 1-year, $900,000 deal, to Martin Jones getting $2 million, to maybe some guys getting in the range of 3 to 4 on a 2-year deal. That's about it. It's not long-term deals, and that has to do with the flat cap. I mean, you're kind of stuck at this point because of the fact that and that's a lot of teams, not just the Flyers. You're stuck with trying to make sure you can navigate this for the long term as much as you can. So they bring in Martin Jones, and Martin Jones kind of comes in needing a bit of a change of scenery, quite honestly. I mean, he's had horrific numbers in San Jose over the last 3 seasons, and it sure sounds like what the goal here is that maybe reuniting him with a goalie coach in Kim Dillabaugh, who is with him in LA for the first 2 years of his career and got him off to a really good start and eventually onto that big contract that he had with San Jose. And maybe that can turn him around. It's certainly like some of these other deals. There's a risk involved. There's a gamble being taken. And I think you could say that about a lot of guys getting signed today and getting traded around the league, that there's a risk involved to it and that you're taking a chance on a guy turning some things around. And that's what the Flyers have here. They're taking a chance on a guy that he can turn things around, because certainly by the numbers, it doesn't look good on the surface. It's not necessarily an upgrade behind Carter Hart. And maybe, to me, that's also a gamble on Carter Hart. That's a bet on Carter Hart, I should say, more or less, that this is your franchise guy. And he didn't have a good year last year, but you believe in him to bounce back. And certainly that's what they're leaning on coming up this season.
Yeah, Jones, 3.04 goals against last year, 986, 896. 986 would be pretty darn good. 896 save percentage over the last 3 seasons. So probably a step back from Moose. No?
I mean, by the numbers, sure, it feels that way. Look, the thing that Martin Jones can do that Brian Elliott can't do is probably start with more regularity if needed. I think Brian Elliott only has a shelf life of so long before you run him into the ground as a starter if you need him, like we saw at the end of the year when Carter Hart was going down, when Carter Hart was struggling and they tried to give him a mental break. Brian Elliott really can't go 3 or 4 starts in a row, and that's why Tampa is such a fit for him. You put him behind Andrei Vasilevsky, who probably is going to start in an 82-game season. He'll start at least 60 to 65 games. You're asking Brian Elliott to probably play in 15 games, so you can keep him well rested and ready to go, and he can probably give you a lot in those 15 games because of how rested he is. Jones, they're going to need more than that. I think at this point, though, and I told Josh the other day, Chuck Fletcher had talked about maybe a 50-30 split in goal. I almost wonder if you're kind of banking on Carter Hart taking that step forward and getting back to form, so you can feel like you can give him 55 games and hold Jones for, say, the 25, maybe 30 if you really need him to, but certainly not something as evenly split down the middle as possible. But hopefully, as Jones said, hopefully the change of scenery helps. He's already motivated because he hasn't liked the way the last 2 years have gone. He's more motivated because San Jose bought him out. And hopefully, like he said, that they can push each other and it improves Carter Hart's game, and maybe Martin Jones becomes a very viable backup to him. Hopefully that's the case.
All right. Nate Thompson was also signed today. He's a kind of a fourth-line grinder. He was here a couple of years ago, so they made that move. The other day, they signed Keith Yandel, who's another veteran defensive player. So it's obvious, and they're not wrong, they felt that they needed help defensively. So kind of give us an overview of what they have done with the trade earlier. I guess it was last. I'm losing track of what day. Today's Wednesday. I think that happened over the weekend. No, that was on Thursday because I was driving when I texted you about that trade, and then Yandel. So give us a little overview on what they've done defensively with all the moves so far.
Yeah. So, one of the things I was thinking about right before I came on with you is This is now like you've made significant changes across the board. There's something to be said for bringing in now with the additions of Jones and Thompson coming in. If you consider Thompson a new addition, even though he was here 2 years ago, that's 6 new faces that weren't on the roster last season. So that's more than 25% of your team at this point. And defensively, there's 3 out of the 6. So half of your defensive core has changed with the addition of Yandel on top of Rasmus Ristolainen and Ryan Ellis. Chuck Fletcher got off to a really good start with all this because Ryan Ellis to me was a really solid fit. I think he's going to fit in really well in that top pairing. I think that fits the role he can play. And you get a guy who can handle that job and can handle the minutes and play in the situations he's needed in. Ristolainen was going to be a different story, that he's a gamble because of the fact that, the analytic numbers don't line up with what some of the scouts see in terms of a physical guy, a guy who can be a hard presence and a guy who people think is hard to play against, but defensively the analytics say differently. So you're taking a chance on that. You hope that a change of scenery out of Buffalo makes him better. Then with Yandel, I think what Keith Yandel is an insurance policy. He's not necessarily a gamble. He's not necessarily an upgrade. He's just an insurance policy for Cam York. Cam York would have been able to come in possibly and play in that role in that third pairing. And Chuck Fletcher's basically kind of put it on his shoulders to address these areas and say, I don't want to have a young player have too much on his plate in year 1 of his career. They took that gamble with Phil Myers last season and it backfired. And it sure seems like now they won't allow for that to happen to any young player that they have. So Cam York is more than likely now with this addition of Yandel going to start the season in the minor leagues, get top pairing minutes with the Phantoms where he can develop even further. And Yandel to me is an insurance policy for depending on how long you see fit. It could be half a season. It could be the whole season, the one year of his contract. It doesn't make a difference. What you're doing is buying some extra time for Cam York to eventually slot into that role. And I think it solidifies your third pairing really well. Yandel's a third pairing type of guy, power play specialist, kind of fits the same type of role you would have asked for from Cam York anyway, but just more of a veteran. And then he goes alongside Justin Braun, and I think you get a stable third pairing that you can protect a lot more and shelter a lot more with these other 2 pairings ahead of them. So I think that sets them up really well.
I was going to ask you, how do you now, and Provorov and Ellis, do you see those 2 together? We were kind of wondering who would be on that second pairing. How do you see these pairings? Because as you mentioned, there's a complete facelift of the defense.
Yeah, so you have it right and for what I have anyway. I would put Ellis with Provorov. I think Ristolainen's going to be next to Sanheim. And then Yandel and Braun are probably your third pairing, at least to start the year. I mean, sure, you could have Cam York come in and have an outstanding camp and maybe knock on the door in some way. But I think for right now, they would like to give him some extra time. And if that's the case, then you've got veterans all over the place at that point, because even Provorov and Sanheim have been around long enough that they were, how long ago was it that they were becoming veterans of the team with younger guys when Myers was coming up, and you're thinking about Cam York coming in or Igor Zamula coming in and getting a chance. Those were the veterans. So they're still established players, and you just now all of a sudden you've made them the youngest members of this group essentially. I mean, Ristolainen is the same age, in the same age range. He's 26, so Provorov being 24, like you kind of can match those guys up a little bit, but a 30-year-old in Ellis, Ristolainen, as I said, is 26. Yandel's in his mid-30s at this point. So you've got guys in Braun, obviously, in the same range. You've got a lot of veteran leadership on this group. And Yandel goes right along with Ristolainen, with Ellis, with Cam Atkinson, who they added it forward. Every single one of these guys, those first 4 guys that they acquired, were all alternate captains at their previous locations. So I think that is a clear indication. Continuing on it, what I had said earlier in the week when I was on with Josh about adding leadership to this locker room. They've added guys who have been there and done that before and know how to try to guide their teammates along from and in the locker room standpoint, off the ice just as much as on it.
Yeah, Kevin Durso, I know you probably talked about the Voracek trade already, but you brought another wrinkle into the mix. I guess Sam Carchidi got a little put on blast by Claude Giroux the other day. Good scoop, Sam. And Sam saying, hey, I didn't say it. Your GM said it. You just brought up the fact that they changed a lot of the leadership, it seems like, in this room. So I don't think it was an out-of-bounds question to ask, hey, if you're talking about leadership, are you going to have the same captain, right?
Yeah, and look, I think the question was also to an extent taken out of context a little bit too. I don't know if it was necessarily addressing, is he your captain? It's also at his age and his experience, does his role change over time? You've added different pieces. You're going to have younger guys moving up and down the lineup. But does this mean that Giroux is a top line guy anymore, or do you put him into a different role? That's the way I heard the question too, to an extent, is not just as a captain, but also is his role going to change over time? I mean, he's got 1 year left on his contract, and then you're supposed to try to potentially, if he's going to be a career flyer, you bring him back, but you're going to bring him back at a much less significant cap hit. So if that's the case, does that mean that his role changes on the ice a little bit and how he's used too, is the way I heard it. So it was not an out of bounds question at all. It was just, and it's fair. He's allowed to answer that question however he sees fit. So if he says no, he's still the captain. He's still the captain. That seems like the sentiment in the locker room anyways, that guys like Claude Giroux as a captain and as a leader, but there's just more voices surrounding it now. I mean, even with Voracek out and the departure of Matt Niskanen from a year ago, they've given Provorov that leadership quality to an extent. You get these 4 guys who come in, Ristolainen, Ellis, Yandel, Atkinson, who have all done that before. Kevin Hayes has been a leader with this group. Sean Couturier has been a leader with this group. I think it kind of just says you can't have too many leaders in that room to guide everybody along and keep everybody on track when you want to try to accomplish a goal like making the playoffs, making a run further than that, and trying to turn this thing around from a franchise standpoint, because it's not just the last year that was unacceptable. It's been this back and forth, make the playoffs, miss the playoffs, that I think everybody's tired of. And I think that they kind of consulted Claude Giroux a little bit about some of this stuff, because Claude Giroux came out at the end of the year and said that he was tired of the losing and tired of having this conversation and tired of being in this position. And if you're doing that, then I think that the management almost sits down and kind of says, do you trust us to make decisions this offseason that we think make the team better? And it may involve having some of your closest friends on this team have to leave. So Jake Voracek, who's been here for a decade, gets sent out, and that's the reason why it happens, because as Chuck Fletcher said, you can't just keep bringing back the same guys and expecting different results. You had to make changes, and it wasn't just for the sake of making changes. This was very calculated decisions on his part. Some of them are going to be gambles, but it's been calculated to make it all work under the cap and address a lot of areas of need.
That's Kevin Durso's take. You could get more over at 973ESPN.com. Kevin has the Flyers busy day up to date over there. You can check out all of the Flyers moves at 973ESPN.com. Thank you, Kevin.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mike.
And I'm sure we'll be checking in with Kevin, because I think the Flyers are going to remain active. I think you'll see something else continue to happen here. So stick around and go check out our website or the free mobile app. Tap on the app, take the show on the go. And when we come back, open up the app and hear Football at 4 on the way. Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and it is brought to you by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bets and take your profit. Find out how at PropSwap.com or download the PropSwap app today. Jeff Mosher's here from the Inside the Birds podcast, which I would imagine is getting an increased amount of listens starting now. How are you, Jeff?
It has been. I've been doing well. How are you, Mike?
I'm good. It's nice to be back into the fire of all the flurry of things that are happening. I mean, Eagles camp, Flyers free agency, the NBA draft, Phillies at the trade deadline. I mean, this is a summer that you usually don't get. I mean, this is a very unexpected mix of things here. But the Eagles obviously take center stage. And Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni unexpectedly, the duo spoke today, and I thought had some very interesting things to say. I guess we can start off at the top of the list, which would be Jalen Hurts. Neither one really wanted to say he's the guy, he's the starter. They did say he's taking the reps with the ones. He's worked hard. He's earned that. But they say they want him to take the reins in. Can you read between the lines to say they're just saying this and they're continuing this charade, or is there something more than that?
I think it's just consistent with what Nick Sirianni has said since he's gotten here, and what he has said has been echoed by Howie Roseman in the front office. It's about competition. You have a very young player in Jalen Hurts. He was not a top 5 pick, so it wasn't, so obvious that you just hand the guy the keys to the offense the way Doug Peterson did with Carson Wentz when he got here. They're still in a fact-finding mode, more so with Jalen Hurts. And for those who were disappointed or upset or read too much into the idea that they wouldn't name him the starter, I always said, you'll get your answer at training camp. You'll see. He'll be out there with the first team on the first day and throughout camp. He is the starting quarterback right now. And the only reason they're not saying it is because they do want to see him, knowing that he's running with the ones, take the reins and see how he does. I mean, he's going to be the starting quarterback unless they do make a trade, or I'll say unless he's completely awful and falls all over himself at camp. But I mean, he would have to be really, really bad, have a terrible camp to not be the starter. But at the point that Nick Sirianni is trying to make is that everybody's out there competing, and it doesn't really make sense to announce anybody as a starter at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I get what he's doing, and like I think he was trying to dance around it as much as he possibly can without saying he's the guy. I think they were trying to show as much confidence in him as they can without breaking the message. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I understand that. I think what people have to also understand though is when you're a quarterback and you don't go in the first round, that's pretty substantial as far as, I mean, how you're like, go look at the list of quarterbacks who have been drafted in the second round, right? Over the last 5, 6, 7 years. Some of them have done well, like Colin Kaepernick and Derek Carr. You'll find 7 or 8 of them who are complete duds too. Your Deshaun Kaisers or Geno Smiths. So the point is that you're kind of like anybody else in the second round. You're not really handed anything. Most second rounders aren't handed anything. So I'm just laughing at my dog now in the background of the picture here. But so that's the thing. Like it's way more of a fact-finding mission as opposed to when you draft a kid top 10 and you start him right away and you kind of have an idea of how he's going to be, and now you have to kind of build up around him. So it does follow suit to not really go out of your way to declare anything, and that goes for anybody.
I mean, I feel like people have a problem with this, but I mean, Hurts is a guy, like if it was Carson Wentz and you're worrying about like his, is this going to I don't think this bothers Hurts.
I don't think it does either. Although I have to admit, I think as a human being, he'll probably never admit it, but the idea that you're constantly hearing about Deshaun Watson, it was asked in the press conference today, I don't think it per se impacts him professionally on the field, but just as a human being, I'm sure it's not so great to always have to hear and have in the back of your mind that I could be playing really well and it still may not matter. But as I'm sure he's been advised by people both with the team and without the team that the only thing he can control is what he does. And if he plays well, even if it's not as an Eagle, if he does get traded, he has the opportunity to go somewhere else most likely and win that starting job. So you might as well start winning that job wherever it is where your feet are at right now.
Jeff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast, Football at 4. All right, Zach Ertz is here. Howie Roseman addressed it. It sounded like he thinks that Ertz will be on the roster at the start of the season.
Well, he kind of said, you always leave yourself wiggle room when you phrase it. Did he say no doubt about it, 100% Zach Ertz will be here at the start of the year? No, he said, I expect. Your expectations can change if somebody picks up the phone and calls you and makes you a great offer. I think what will be a telltale sign for their true intentions, which I believe haven't changed, is how much work he'll get when the pads come out. And if you're really truly planning on having Zach Ertz in your offense, then you're probably planning on playing a lot more 12 personnel than maybe you originally thought, because you're not going to have him there and just sit on the bench doing nothing if you think he can still contribute, right? Today, he was in and out of the team, and this is just day one, so don't read too much into it. But by my count, there was not a time where they were out on the field offensively in a 12 personnel package with Ertz and Goddard on the field at the same time. So what does that tell you? I don't know. If it's that way 2 weeks from now, I think you'll get a pretty good indication of what the plans are. If they're going to be heavily 11 personnel, then it's hard for me to think that these two guys are still going to be on the team together.
Yeah, because Sirianni was asked, hey, does that, change? Do you have to play more 12 personnel? He didn't indicate that, we have to play more because we have two great tight ends. He kind of tried to say, no, we could K in 11, and then you just have to figure out what we're doing. Yeah,
training camp really, for those, we weren't there last year. You got a great reminder today of how open-ended every single comment about everybody and everything is. I mean, everything's possible. Anything can happen. Everybody's just working really hard. Everybody's competing. There's no starters. We're just here learning everything. It's very hard to nail these guys down on specifics on day one of training camp.
Yep. All right. So that being said, do you think that's Ertz will be here?
I don't. I really don't. I still, I said it with Josh the other day. I still struggle with the idea of having an $8.5 million backup tight end a year after you sold your fan base on the important economics of having a backup quarterback drafted in the second round because he's cost controlled. Like, why is it? It's very important position, quarterback, and it's important to not have to spend 7, 8, 10, 15 million on a backup quarterback this day. So you draft one in the second round. That was their rationale. Economic. Okay, what's the economic rationale of having an $8.5 million backup tight end? Can you find one? Does that make sense? Not to me.
No, I agree. So we'll see. By the way, I guess Nick Sirianni got an introduction to live press conferences in Philadelphia today.
Because of his kid?
Just in general, the jockeying
the
jockeying for position to get your question in. Now, was this a live setting? Was the Zoom gone?
Yeah, the Zoom was gone. It was a live press conference, so it was sort of normal-ish, I would say. There were not any one-on-one interviews or even kind of scrums. Every interview today was a podium, outside podium interview. I think Jalen Hurts was the one who was seemingly most taken aback by how it works here, because at one point at the end of his press conference, as guys were trying to shout their questions out, he goes, oh, that's how y'all do it here? Like, you just start shouting over him. It's almost like, how it is in college. Everything is very segmented. I'm sure they call on certain guys to ask questions. It's not a free-for-all like it is. It's like its own sport here in Philadelphia. So I think he was a little surprised by that.
Well, a year for doing it for your rookie season and being on Zoom had to be way different than looking at all these people just firing questions. And they, how are you feeling? What do you take? And, I got to pay the rent. I mean, he obviously was a little wide-eyed at first, but it seems that I don't know. You mentioned it. I mean, he's gone through this before, Hurts. So I thought today he handled himself pretty well.
Yeah, definitely. And I will say this, for as much as the public likes to think that there's a real adversarial relationship between players and media, and they really get a kick out of any time, one calls out the other or vice versa. All six guys, I think, who came to the podium, we're talking Brandon Graham, Jason Kelce, Fletcher Cox, Devontae Smith, Jalen Hurts, and I'm probably missing someone. But I think every single one of them sat down and before it started, looked at the media there and said, you know what? It's really good to see you guys in person again. It's nice. It's good to have interaction that's not kind of, coordinated, but, stream of conscious sometimes. And just to have people kind of make, anything in life. You make connections with face and voice and things like that.
Well, I was wondering because I know the Aaron Rodgers presser today, they had people there. They also had people on Zoom. So
really?
They let people that were there really dominate it. And then they said, all right, we're going to take a couple Zoom questions for people who were not able or weren't allowed or for whatever reason were not there. That's why I wasn't sure.
Well, I think about that, and I'm talking out of place here, but just speculating. One, there might have been a lot of national type of media who wanted to be in on that press conference who, for obvious reasons, couldn't be there because of where they're located. Or two, Wisconsin, the way it like Milwaukee is 2.5, 3 hours, right, from Green Bay. So maybe it was a way to get like media who are not from or in Green Bay at the time as part of the press conference while limiting how many people are actually at the Green Bay itself press conference, because they are doing that here in a smaller sense there, that we are a part of tiers. Like if you're 2M in the media, you get to kind of ask the questions and be a little close, like sitting in the seats. If you're 3OA or something like that, you're around. You can't ask a question, but you can be like within 5 feet of where the media asking questions are, which I found a little odd, but these are the rules that they are right now.
Yep. All right. Let's dive into some other things that I guess were of note today that maybe we didn't know is guard Isaac Seumalo. He did not play with a hamstring injury. He did not practice today. So you got Seumalo and then you got Landon Dickerson, two guys who play that position. Neither one of them could be out there today. So Nate Herbig was at first team guard. So we already have our first offensive line issue of the season.
Yeah, what's that expression about the more things change, the more they stay the same, right? Nate Herbig, he's out there, left guard, looking good, by the way. He's down several. I think Adam Kaplan reported on our podcast that he was down to close to 30 pounds, which is something he needed to be. Looking svelte there for an offensive lineman. So yeah, he took his spot there at left guard. The funny thing is, the Eagles don't tell you how these guys got hurt, and you wonder how there's 6 or 7 guys who are out of practice on day one when they haven't done anything. I don't want to make assumptions, but I think a real big part of our Q&A that dropped this morning with Quentin Michael and Jason Avant was they talked about that conditioning test that the whole team has to take before the start of practice and before the start of training camp, and how difficult it can be. And certain players at certain positions have to run gassers in a certain amount of time, and there have been times where guys got hurt taking that conditioning test. And just for an example, and I don't know if this is exactly the case, but Quez Watkins was listed as out today, and what the team wrote was incomplete physical, which is, for a wide receiver to get to camp and not be able to complete a physical. I don't know if that's related to the conditioning test or something else, but I'm sorry. I mean, when you're a second-year wide receiver who's I think a 6th-round pick trying to make the team, that can't look pretty good that you're already out because you're not able to get through your physical, unless there's something different about this. But it just doesn't have a good look to me.
All right, let's stay at wide receiver. Obviously, Jalen Reagor, last year's first-round pick. People were saying, all right, I want to see him. Well, he was limited. What's the story there?
Yeah, he was out there for warm-ups and he was doing things. So at first there was some uncertainty about whether or not he was going to practice. And then he kind of late came off the field. So it looked like maybe a decision was made there even before he did anything, that they were going to be cautious with the lower leg injury that they said he has. It's my understanding it's minor and that he could be back very soon. And that this was kind of just to make sure that you don't want to get this guy hurt day one overdoing it. So it was a very short practice today by camp practices anyway. So we'll see.
All right. Devonta Smith, the first thing is everybody talked about this guy catches everything. Well, of course, the first tweet I saw was Devonta Smith dropped the pass. Is it the Philadelphia hands getting shifted over to him?
God, that would just be so Philadelphia, wouldn't it? Or
right?
He's got some kind of Markel Fultzian, Ben Simmonsian thing of not being able to catch the ball all of a sudden. But I don't think that's going to be the case. But it was fair, and he even said it himself in his Zoom conference. Today was not his best showcase. Dropped a couple. I just felt in general.
Guy, who has all this hype coming in. You draft the wide receiver number 10 overall, and he comes out and says, I didn't really have a good day.
Yeah, no, I know. It's not great. And look, you at least want accountability. It's not like he tried to hide it. He dropped a few. I thought his route running was just kind of, for a guy who's been all business and coming out of Alabama, I would suspect that on day one, it was just a little bit of pressing. And sometimes when you're in your head, you tend to play slowly and react slowly. So it might make it look like you're doing things half speed out there, but it's not necessarily laziness. It's just like you're caught up in the moment a little bit. And maybe that was the key. I know that's hard to believe because of everything that he's done in his college career in the big stage, but this is not Alabama. It's Philadelphia. So we'll see.
All right. Football 4, Jeff Mosher's here. We have so much I want to kind of hit on. Who got the reps at left tackle? Do you have I know we don't have a starter there, but did you get a read on the way that they are going to approach this?
Yeah, and by the way, a lot of the 7-on-7, 11-on-11 today was mostly red zone and a little bit starting at the 20 moving, but there wasn't a ton of it, so it's hard to, I didn't track, but I saw Jordan Mailata and Andre Dillard at left tackle. Was it 50-50? Hard to say. Can't keep your eye on everybody, but it seemed that way to me.
So that's definitely something that we're all going to be keeping an eye on as well. All right, so let's go to the defensive back. I wasn't here the other day. I'm sure you discussed it with Josh about Steven Nelson. But what does that do for this defense now that Nelson was out there? I guess it puts Maddox right in the slot. I mean, I guess the question would be, do you think Maddox would have been on the outside? Who was the guy behind Nelson? Like, there's a lot there to me that I think is interesting. But what does a Slay, Nelson, Maddox secondary do for this team?
It gives it stability, I think, and it puts the right people in the right places. Steven Nelson's a decent enough outside corner to be your number 2 corner. He's not going to be perfect. There are going to be games where after the game we're like, everybody wanted Steven Nelson for this. That's just how it works in the NFL. He's going to see a lot of targets because he's the guy opposite Darius Slay. But it puts Avonte Maddox inside in the slot where he'll compete. He did get first-team reps in the slot. There was a lot of zone today, by the way. I would say mostly zone coverage today. And I don't know if that's because it's going to be predominant in Jonathan Gannon's scheme, or I've also been told that a lot of times it's best to start off with zone because you're working on eye discipline a lot and you want your defense to see things in front of them and, patterns and certain like that before you start getting into man coverage and just having them run around. So it's a lot of it is a learning process too. But yeah, it just puts the pieces in their place for now, Mike. But then once there's an injury, which there always is, right, kind of throws everything out of whack.
Well, I talked earlier about this motion, see if you agree. Every deficiency they had, they upgraded.
Every deficiency they had, they upgraded.
On defense. Yeah. On defense. I mean, the second year was awful. They're better there. I thought Mills was okay. I would have to imagine Harris is better than Mills at that position. The linebacker, I guess bringing Wilson's better than whatever you had there last year. I mean, it seems at every spot that you had a problem. I'm not saying that you're significantly better, but they have upgraded the deficiencies that plagued them last year. How much?
I think that's fair to say. For their immediate holes, they filled them. Do I think they're the deepest? Not even the deepest team, but have they been deeper in the past from 2017, 18, and 19 at cornerback, safety, defensive tackle, and even linebacker? Yes, they've been deeper at those positions before. But you were right. At the end of January, if you were to have the Eagles, line up in February and play a game, they had no number 2 corner, no number 1 linebacker. You're correct. Not a lot of depth on the D-line or a pass rush because of guys who were left. So I agree with you. They filled starting spots or spots of need. They're just not as deep as you would expect a team that really wants to compete, right, for a Super Bowl to be.
And the way I kind of look at it is, do I think Steve Nelson's worth 4 or 5 wins? No, but what he does is he allows you to compete in 4 or 5 games that you probably can't compete in, and now that game is kind of in limbo because you have a competitive NFL player at that position.
Yeah, that's where it goes back to you have the right pieces in the right places. You have Avonte Maddox who now can be inside where he's best. You don't have to rush Zach McPherson onto the field as a 4th-round pick. You don't have to play Michael Jacquet, who's not ready to be a starter just because he has good size on the outside. So, yeah, it completes you in a way that you can line up, play a game, and harbor, competitive expectations without thinking, well, we have such a sore spot here that there's no way around it.
Give me a quick offensive and defensive observation you made today.
Well, I thought Jalen Hurts didn't have a great day. Tried to thread a couple of windows in the red
That's not
zone.
a great observation. Damn it.
It's you didn't say a positive one. You just said an
I'm
observation.
kidding. I'm kidding.
No, he threw. He tried to thread one to Gainwell. Got picked off by Josiah Scott. There was a play where he rolled to his left, pretended to tuck it like he was going to run, but then kind of pulled it out, and it wasn't fooling Darius Slay because he batted it away. So I look, to be fair, and this will be a common observation. Defense is usually ahead of offense the first few days of camp because offense involves timing and rhythm and comfort, and defense. You don't get blocked by offensive linemen very well without the pads on. So defense is always ahead of the offense for the first week or so of camp.
All right, defensive observation.
Defense. Well, I did tell you that they played a lot of zone, a lot of two deep coverage. So Milton Williams, the rookie third-round pick, who is a defensive tackle, at least it was announced as one, played a lot of defensive end in the sub packages there. So that was kind of interesting. And then also, when Hargrave and Cox come off the field as your starting defensive tackles, it seemed like the first two guys on were Hassan Ridgeway, as you would expect, and T.Y. McGill. Not a name that I think people expected to hear. So, but that was the rotation there. And then Josh Sweat, I'm sorry, I'm going on a little, but Josh Sweat seemed to rotate with Barnett at one of the defensive end spots opposite Brandon Graham on the first team there.
I like it. All right. So give the people who are fans of the Inside the Birds podcast and you get football at 4, you get us every day, but you guys, what can they get if they want more Eagles? What is the schedule changing? What's the new schedule? When does that take place?
We will have more. We're not ready to make that announcement yet on what, but I can hint to you that if you're enjoying the Q&A show, it's going to be sticking around for a little bit.
Okay, there you go. Jeff Mosher, Football at 4 is back tomorrow. It's Adam Kaplan's observations, day 2 of Eagles camp. And, of course, Andrew is back on Friday. Jeff will be here on Monday. Football at 4, Eagles camp is back. It all feels right in the world. Thank you, Jeffrey.
You're welcome. Have a great one, Mike.
All right, Jeff Mosher here on the Sports Bash. It's brought to you by Prop Swap, America's sports betting marketplace. Make your sports bets and find your profit at PropSwap.com. Download the PropSwap app today. My guys at PropSwap, man, a great PropSwap. We were talking with Luke, who founded PropSwap the other day. The Eagles are like 100-1 to win the Super Bowl. You can go buy that ticket now if you think they can surprise people and then try to sell that thing, because Eagle fans will jump all over it if they're like 6-1 at some point. Let's say they're 2-0. They get off to a 2-0 start. You sell that 100-1 ticket and let somebody else take that 100-1 ticket. You could go buy, if you bought a Packers ticket and now Aaron Rodgers is locked in, he's ready to go. Whatever you got the Packers at like 2 weeks ago, I'd sell that ticket at some point during the season. You could prop swap it. PropSwap.com. Download the PropSwap app today. All right. Man, we got so much going on. Do you remember on the other side, Jake Fisher on the latest on Ben Simmons, because there's new news that is out. It is current. Jake Fisher wrote a whole column about it yesterday, and it is almost updated already today. We got all that coming up, plus Scott Lauber on the Phillies at 5, Jeff Kerr on the Eagles and the NFL at 5:25. Here we go. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. I'm Mike Gill. Do you remember? These are events that all happened on this day, July the 28th. Josh Ennings, my producer. Hey, Josh.
Afternoon.
Afternoon, sir. How you been? How was the week?
Busy. As you mentioned earlier, it's almost like Christmas. All this stuff is happening. Well, actually, a few days ago it was Christmas in July. But
Was it?
today's 28th.
That's right. Christmas in July.
Speaking of the 28th, what we got going on today?
We do have a bunch of things going on this day, July the 28th. So I do want to, why I was not here, a lot of stuff happened. Steve Nelson signed. The Flyers did a bunch of stuff. Phillies, they're still in the same spot they were when I left, 3.5 games out. The Eagles are now here, are back, I guess you could say. Ben Simmons is still not traded, but it's seemingly getting closer and closer that he will not be here. What was the Steve Nelson reaction? I'm interested in that because that story had been kind of going on all offseason long. And I remember when I was getting ready to leave, we talked to Adam Kapp and I was here Thursday, and he said, look, I wouldn't be surprised if something happened by the end of the day. So that seemed to be imminently happening.
Yeah, my perception of the reaction was Sunday into Monday was part relief by certain Eagle fans, and part of it was people saying, all right, I feel a lot better about this team now.
It's amazing how much that one guy has.
One guy.
It is. It's really interesting how the one guy has changed. I don't know, the vibe. It's not like the expectation. I think it's more the vibe. Is that fair?
Oh, it's absolutely fair. And listen, I've talked to more and more people now in the last few days who have said they feel like this is at minimum 7-8 win team.
That's what I said. I think the ceiling. Well, right. I think they could be a 10-win team if everything goes their way.
Right, that would be the ceiling.
They need a lot of breaks to go their way.
That would be best case scenario.
Yeah, best case scenario. July 28th, 1991, Dennis Martinez tosses the first perfect game in Montreal Expos history, the 13th in Major League Baseball history. He's also the first Nicaraguan-born pitcher to throw a perfect game. Since then, Felix Hernandez did it in 2012, but that happened on this day in 1991. Presidente, Dennis Martinez. He always had a big thing of chew in his mouth.
Huge thing of chew. He was also a pitcher on that 95 Indians team that tried to dethrone the Braves. The Braves got their only World Series in the 90s.
I like Dennis Martinez. He had that big leg kick, He put his head under his leg.
Did it also always look like his hat was a little too big for his head?
Yes, and he had that big chew just always
Huge.
Hanging out of his mouth. 93, Ken Griffey Jr. ties the major league record with home runs in 8 consecutive games. He misses the breaking record after he doubled off the wall in his next game. 8 home runs in 8 consecutive games, I think is pretty outstanding. But to think about that, how hard that would be to do.
Not just hard, but also you have to the cooperation you need from the opposing pitcher to give you pitches to hit too is another thing as well. Remember Barry Bonds was getting walked, seemed like almost every other at bat during 2000 and 2001. If you're a hot hitter today, are they going to let you even hit the ball, or are they just going to walk you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, are you getting and two, the shift and all that stuff, I know that doesn't have to do with home runs, but they just pitch you so differently because of the way defenses are.
Sure.
1999, speaking of Barry Sanders abruptly retires from the NFL on this day in 1999, despite rushing for 1,500 yards in his age 30 season. He ran for at least 1,100 yards in every year, 10 years that he played in the NFL. He led the league in rushing yards 4 times. And despite the early cutoff of his career, he is 3rd all-time rushing. Barry Sanders on this day. I can't believe Barry Sanders hasn't been in the league. He didn't play a game in the 2000s.
At all. He's one of the greatest players to ever live and play the game. He literally was confined to just a decade only as a player. I mean, you look at the greatest running backs of all time. If you don't have him in your top 3, I think we need to have a conversation.
We got Emmitt Smith. He leads all time. Then Walter Payton. Barry Sanders is 3rd, and Frank Gore is number 4.
And the problem with that is, and no offense to Emmett and Frank, but you could quantify them both as stat compilers, because if Barry would have played long enough, he'd have more running He'd had the most rushing yards. And
Yeah, Barry Sanders was, for those of you who are a little young, Barry Sanders was like a video game.
he was a video game before video games.
He was unbelievable.
I mean, and his legs were larger than life too. You think Saquon's
He
quads
was
are
very
large
short
now?
to the ground. He had an awful offensive line in Detroit, always bad teams, but he was just, I mean, oh man, he was so much.
spectacular.
I can't believe though, like reading that, it's like, man, I can't believe he just abruptly retired. Like they had that happen to him twice. They had it happen with Megatron.
That's right. Hey, listen, Detroit is where hopes and dreams go to die. I guess.
Yeah. Texas Rangers pitcher Kenny Rogers had a perfect game on this day too, 1994. Kenny Rogers blanked the Angels at the ballpark at Arlington. So 2 perfect games on this day.
Wow. Kenny Rogers, what a name.
The Gambler had a chance to pitch for the Yanks a little bit later on.
He pitched for the Yankees, the Rangers, the A's, the Tigers. He bounced around a bit.
Yep. And by the way, on this day, 1984, the Summer Games began in L.A. The Soviet Union boycotted the games in response to the United States doing the same thing over the USSR's invasion of Afghanistan when they were held in Moscow 4 years earlier. The U.S. won the most medals, 174. Are you watching the Olympics? I have not seen. I don't even know what channel it's on.
Well, that's part of the problem, and that's why you are among the people who have given the Olympics their lowest viewership since 1988, and it's down almost 50% since the 2016 Olympics, to the point where, according to Variety magazine, NBC, the advertisers, are wondering if they overpaid for Olympic advertising this year.
Of course they did. Of course they did.
I'm watching certain events, but the problem is, you say you don't know what channel it's on. On the day that Team USA lost to France, you couldn't fight on TV. It was on NBC. It was on USA. It was on MSNBC. It was on NBC Sports Network. It was on any of the 4 channels the games are on. They had everything on from water polo to doubles, tennis, but not the basketball game.
Jeff Bone and Pookie wants to know. He says, I wanted to ask you, Mike, how did your baseball team do? Well, in the immortal words of Jake Taylor, we won the whole bleeping thing. We're going to the World Series. I will be out for about 10 days coming up when we are at the World Series. There you go. We won the regionals. We are heading to the World Series. August the 12th, I will be traveling to that World Series site. That is today's Do You Remember?
97.3 ESPN.
All right, here we go. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. It's been a busy day. We've got NHL free agency underway. We've got the Major League Baseball trade deadline on Friday. The Eagles are at camp. And, of course, the Sixers are back in the news because they've got someone. Oh, he can't hear me again. All right, Jake Fisher can't hear me. We'll try to get him. All right, we'll pop him out and move him back in and see if we can get him back up there and get him to hear me. That's his fault. Don't blame me for that. All right, Jake Fisher from Bleacher Report, who had a couple of interesting observations and nuggets in his column yesterday about Ben Simmons, and I think Josh talked a little bit about some of the stuff in that report. But so far today, we've got some interesting stuff to kind of dive into as we take a look at what Jake Fisher is reporting over at Bleacher Report in the NBA, and he's going to join us here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. All right, Jake, let's get into a lot of this stuff, man. How you doing?
I'm tired, but, we're forging forward. How are you, man?
Man, it has been a interesting week here. So I know you're tired because you're probably trying to nail down where Ben Simmons will be moved to, but increasingly likely that he will be moved. His side is, I guess, embracing this. What has changed maybe from what you had yesterday to where we are today? Because you mentioned that indications are kind of pointing to Bradley Beal staying with the Wizards, and that's one of the teams interested there. And, of course, the Heat are involved. That doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. Toronto, we've heard a lot about that. So has things been changing over the last 24 hours?
Not really. I'm getting the strong sense that Daryl Morey recognizes if Bradley Beal or Damian Lillard were to request a trade at some point in the next 4 weeks or so, Ben Simmons would be the best trade chip available for either of those guys. Jaylen Brown is not going to be made available in Boston. And if you look at the Warriors' potential package with Wiseman and these two picks, 7 and 14, if they become, once they even become players this year, and Andrew Wiggins, Ben Simmons is still the best trade chip on the board there. So I think Daryl's doing a really good job of keeping his value high in talks with teams looking to just get Ben, signaling that is where, Ben Simmons' value is right now in terms of trading for the next level of superstar. So with that, unless the Sixers get, an offer that really knocks them to their socks off, I think Ben Simmons is going to stick around in Philly for at least the time being, and they'll wait out hoping that Damian Lillard or Bradley Beal end up, requesting to be with a different team.
So obviously the draft is tomorrow. Is that a day that Ben Simmons and his team should be anticipating hearing something, or are you getting the feeling that tomorrow night is not the best night for the Sixers to do something with him?
So the way this draft is shaping up, teams are making incredible offers to move up in the draft. The top 3 is considered to be, full of future Hall of Famers. And with that, I think every time a team comes on the board here, whether it be number 1 or number 2 or number 3, all the way down to picks in the 20s, I think a lot of teams are going to be calling every single pick when that 5-minute clock starts, offering, more aggressive deals because there's going to be someone available there that they either didn't think was still there, or now that the guy they want is there and the clock is ticking and the pressure is on, another offers become a lot more serious. So anything can happen on draft night. I just don't think at this point in time it really, is shaping up to be where Ben Simmons gets moved on draft night. I think, Sixers fans will probably be reacting more so to Philly trading number 28 for a veteran piece or so. But anything can happen. The Toronto talks haven't died down. And I was told to keep an eye on a, quote, stealthy mystery team for him. I don't know what the hell that means. I'm not reporting that. Please don't aggregate that. But no. I just said that. I just said that to say that, there's clearly teams that are interested in him, even with Philly's asking price. So the conversations are going to keep going, even if there isn't a deal done.
Yeah, and I think the point you make is that even the teams you're hearing, there could be somebody who's just kind of lying in the weeds saying, hey, how can we get Ben Simmons? Well, it sounds like the price, Jake, is going to be very steep. That has not changed. It's not like Daryl Morey said, you know what? I'm kind of in the mood to move him right now, so I'm going to lower my asking price. If anything, it almost seems like it's getting even higher.
Yeah. And, if I'm Daryl, I'm a really big fan personally myself of Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. And the fact that, the Thunder are not shopping him by any stretch, but the fact that they're open to discussing him, I think that's a real opportunity to get a player where, Philly's only moving Ben Simmons for one reason, right? And it's because of the fit with Joel Embiid and his inability to be a game-changing factor at that salary slot in terms of the Sixers championship prospects. So they're only going to be making a move that improves that, right? So I think that's something to keep in mind here moving forward as well.
Jake Fisher, Bleacher Report, NBA, of course, the draft is tomorrow night, and Ben Simmons' name continues to get out there. The three teams, Miami, Toronto, and what's the third one that's slipping my mind right now, that have interest. They're all in the Eastern Conference, right? Miami, Toronto, and Washington.
Washington
right.
was mentioned.
Washington.
Yeah, but I think that's, if Bradley Beal were to request a trade, which again he hasn't yet, and it doesn't seem like he will at this point. I think Ben Simmons is again the best trade chip out there for him or for Damian Lillard. And what I've been told is that the Wizards probably would want to remain relevant in the playoff picture. And if we saw it at the end of, I forget which regular season it was at this point, but when Joel was hurt and that team went like 17-0, running around Ben Simmons in transition, that could be kind of mimicked in Washington and give him an opportunity to grow and find his stride again. So I think that's kind of, where things stand.
Yeah, and I guess, Toronto, they're all in the Eastern Conference is where I was kind of going. Does Daryl Morey have any reservations about, hey, I'm going to put Ben Simmons in the Eastern Conference? Yeah, he's not a great offensive player at times, but do I want this guy locking me down in a 7-game series?
I don't think so, because if he were to go to Toronto or Washington, the Miami stuff seems very weird. There was an obvious friction between him and Jimmy Butler. So I don't see, I could be wrong, but I just don't see that marriage working out. So if Ben were to go to Toronto or Washington, let's say, I don't think either of those teams would really be legitimate, playoff threats anyway, right? Like, are the Raptors with whatever they have back plus Ben Simmons, are they really, going from a non-playoff team to someone that's going to really give Philly fits? I'm not really sure about that. I don't think that's something Daryl would be too concerned about. Okay, Jake Fisher over at Bleacher Report, you wrote the other day that the overwhelming expectation around the NBA remains that Philadelphia will trade Simmons before the start of training camp. So do they sit and wait for the best offer, or do they make the decision that we'd like to move them by the start of training camp and we'll just do what the best, Like, do they take the best offer now, or do they wait to the beginning of training camp and then kind of weigh them all out? I think they're waiting for Damian Lillard's situation to have more clarity.
Right.
But I also think, something that could impact this situation is the point guard carousel at the top of this free agency is everything. And there's 8 or 9 teams who are in the mix for Kyle Lowry and Mike Conley and Lonzo Ball and Dennis Schroeder. Maybe a team that misses out on one of those guys, maybe that's someone who can pop out of the woodwork and all of a sudden start to push their chips on the table and make a more serious offer for Ben. So I think Philly has all the benefit to wait and hold out the market here and hope that the offers improve.
Now, you also wrote that the talks between the Raptors and the Sixers are the most advanced that Philadelphia has had. Does the Toronto Raptors have a package that is worthy of pulling the trigger on?
I don't think they've gotten particularly close. I think in terms of advanced, by that I mean there's been some types of frameworks discussed on each side as to what they'd be looking for in return. Versus, you hear a lot of talk. Like, I talked to Cleveland yesterday, and there's so many teams interested in trading up there. And Cleveland has basically said to me at this point that, like, no team has made them a serious offer for 3A. It's just kind of, our picks, some future picks, blah, 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 blah. So I think in saying that the talks with Toronto are the most advanced, I think the fact that they're actually talking about players is something that's noteworthy, being that a lot of these teams haven't even really done that yet.
Crazy stuff, obviously, on the night of the draft. Now, is Morey in a tough spot because he essentially wants to wait for Dame Lillard or Bradley Beal to announce their intentions, or does that just make him say, I'm not going to trade Ben Simmons unless one of those two guys are available? You know what I mean? Like if he pulls the trigger on a trade with, say, Toronto or Miami, and then all of a sudden it's, oh, you missed out because Dame Lillard or Bradley Beal just decided they don't want to be here anymore. Like, does he have to kind of drag his feet a little here?
Exactly. I think that's what the situation is, and I think there's value to waiting out how the free agency market plays out. He's at the end of the day, the longer we get away from that playoff failure, I think the more Ben Simmons' value moves up. I think recency bias, is hurting them right now. But like I said, once the point guard market, dust settles and you clear the rubble, and maybe someone like the Knicks or Dallas or whatever. I don't know. I'm just throwing out names of the point guard teams. Maybe some team, perks their head up and says, "Hey, like we need a point guard. We need ball handling. We need creative activity here. Like maybe we just take a shot on Ben and hope he becomes our guy."
Jake Fisher, of course, BleacherReport.com. Check out his latest on the NBA free agency. And don't forget his book is called Built to Lose, How the NBA's Tanking Era Changed the League Forever. It is a great read for this final month of the summer season on the beach. And make sure you pick that up and check it all out about how we got to this point, essentially, where the Sixers are now deciding whether or not they should move on from a guy that they essentially lost on purpose to get. Puts them at a very big crossroads here. This is a very big offseason, but I'll ask you, Jake, are the Sixers considering ways to improve this team through trades without trading Ben Simmons?
Yeah, I mean, there's talk about 28 being available. Daryl Morey is looking at every single aspect of this roster and seeing how he can improve it. So, Seth Curry is someone who's super valuable to that team, but he's also considered one of the best value contracts in the league right now. So maybe that's something they can use to re-up their roster and talent here. Kyle Lowry's still a name that they're often linked to, and there's a way to get him and sign and trade for him. It doesn't include Ben, with Tobias Harris's contract or other stuff. I'm not saying this stuff is being talked about, literally, but these are all frameworks that I'm sure Daryl Morey's kicking around in his head.
At Jake L. Fisher on Twitter for all the NBA news that is essentially happening almost by the every 10 minutes, it seems like here, especially here locally with Ben Simmons. And don't forget, check out the book, Built to Lose. Jake Fisher's the author, BleacherReport.com. All right, Jake, enjoy it, man.
You got it. Take care.
All right. Built to Lose, How the NBA's Tanking Era Changed the League Forever. That's Jake Fisher, the author, and his stuff at BleacherReport.com you can get by following him at Jake L. Fisher on Twitter. I am Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. We are live. Yes, indeed. Scott Lauber is going to join me on the other side for the latest on the Phillies, whose game may be postponed tonight because of COVID. It appears that the Washington Nationals, according to Ken Rosenthal of Fox, could be in jeopardy due to a COVID outbreak with the Nationals. So we got that. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. But we don't really care about the game. We want to know how they're going to improve this team. And Scott Lauber has those answers for us. Coming up next here on the Sports Bash. They tried to trade for a pitcher yesterday. Couldn't get the deal done. So now what? What is plan B? And all the latest on the Phillies at the trade deadline. With Scott Lauber from the Philadelphia Inquirer. He joins me on the other side. Stick around. I am Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash.
ESPN. Now, live inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, here's Mike Gill.
All right, some news on the Phillies game today. There's a possibility, anyway, I guess, that the game could be postponed. As Scott Lauber tweets over at Scott Lauber on Twitter, the Nationals are dealing with a COVID situation. They are taking batting practice. They play at 1 o'clock tomorrow. It's the last trip to Philly. The two teams have a couple series remaining. They're both in Washington. The Phillies line up tonight: Segura, Realmuto, Harper, McCutchen, Hoskins, Bohm, Torreyes, Williams, and Wheeler. So Didi getting the night off at shortstop there. We'll talk more about that. Scott Lauber, we know the Phillies at the deadline on Friday, and we know they tried to make a trade yesterday. We'll get into that. But what do we know about the future of tonight's game? Is that been decided yet?
Hey, Mike. No decision. I'm actually trying to figure that out as we speak here to see if there's anything new. The Phillies just came off the field after batting practice. The Nationals have some pitchers out in the outfield doing some running and had some stretching and going through their day, but they are I don't know. It does not appear that they're taking batting practice. So, yeah, they're dealing with something. We know Trey Turner left the game last night, tested positive for COVID-19. It's interesting to note that the Nationals are they have reached the 85% vaccine threshold for their traveling party. I don't know what the breakdown is, how many of that percentage are players and how many are staff, but all of their tier one people, they're at 85%. So, but they're dealing with something, and we'll see. Here, it's very much a developing kind of situation for them.
Okay, so we'll keep our eye on that and of course, Scott is there. So if something happens, he might get tapped on the shoulder. He might have to bolt. They might tell him something. So keep it locked. All right. So the Phillies tried to make a trade yesterday. That fell through. And obviously they know they need some pitching help. So what happened with that particular deal, and now where do they turn their attention to?
So my understanding is that they had agreed, the Phillies and Pirates had agreed to a trade. It was going to be Tyler Anderson to the Phillies for two single-A players at Clearwater. And what happens when what happens when these trades get made is typically the teams exchange medical information on the players that are involved, and they have their doctors look through it. And it's not a free agent sort of situation where you bring the player in for a physical. This is more just, of the player, and they do it, like their medical people look over it. And Pirates had some concerns about the medicals on Christian Hernandez, who was a young pitcher who was going to Pittsburgh in the deal, 20-year-old pitcher, right-handed pitcher down in Clearwater. And so I'm not exactly sure what happened after that, and whether they tried to revive the trade, whether there was any discussion of replacing that player with another player. I don't know if that was the case. But I guess it was right around midnight last night where the Pirates made a deal with the Mariners to send Tyler Anderson there for two minor leaguers, and so that's what happened. I haven't heard. Not aware if Pirates have addressed this yet. Phillies have not. So we don't have any explanation on, like I said, what happened after the Pirates raised their concerns. But I think it took the Phillies a little bit off guard. I think they thought they'd had a deal for Anderson, who's as I started to write yesterday, I mean, he's not like Cy Young or anything, but he's kind of like Pac-Man in that he eats up a lot of innings, and that's what they need right now is a guy who just eats innings. He's gone at least 5 innings in every start he's made this year, and he's consistent, not spectacular, and that's kind of what they need. Somebody who they can throw out there every 5th day and have a little bit more confidence that they know what they're going to get than they have right now when they send out Vince Velasquez or Matt Moore, or Spencer Howard. So I think they were caught a little off guard, and now they've got to kind of go back to the drawing board and figure out whether there's another pitcher out there like that. There are plenty of pitchers out there like that who could be moved before Friday at 4. Do any of them? Do they like any of them as much as they apparently like Anderson? And can they make a deal with any of the teams that have those guys? Whether it's John Gray from Colorado or Zach Davies from the Cubs, there are going to be innings-eating pitchers out there. It's just a matter of whether a deal can be made.
Yeah, Scott Lauber's with us from the Inquirer. Obviously, they tried to trade for a starting pitcher, as you just chronicled. Have they placed that importance higher than bullpen help at this point?
I'm not sure. I think if we were talking about this maybe 5 days ago, I'd have said that I thought they were leaning bullpen slightly over rotation. I believe what's going on with Zach Eflin has, at least in some shape or form, it has heightened their pursuit of starting pitching. I mean, he has a knee injury. They thought he'd miss a couple of starts and be back. He threw a bullpen session Sunday. It didn't feel great. So now he's sort of talked to him just a little while ago. He's sort of going day by day and trying to figure out when he can get back on a mound. So needless to say, it's going to be more than a couple of starts. It's going to be probably into, it's probably going to be into August now and several weeks into August before he can pitch again. And he's their number 3 starter. So I do think that they're probably a little bit more, they're placing a little bit higher priority than they already were even on starting pitching, given that they don't know what's going on with Eflin exactly.
Right. There's so much to unpack with this team. It seems like with about 48 hours left to go until the trade deadline here, they tried to get a starter. They need some bullpen help. Are they, in your estimation, in on the bigger name bullpen guys?
I mean, the biggest name is Kimbrel, and I do believe that they have, they're in on him in that I'm sure that they've talked to the Cubs about him. But if what we're hearing is correct, the Cubs are going to ask for a lot in return. Not only has Kimbrel been dominant this year, which enables them to sell high, but they're going to position him as a controllable pitcher for next year. He has a team option. It's an expensive one. It's $16 million. You don't have to pick up the option if you trade for him, but whether or not you intend to pick it up, you're going to pay for, the cost to acquire him is going to be treated like a pitcher with more than just 2 months left of control. So I think the cost to acquire Kimbrel is going to be pretty high, and I'm not sure the Phillies, I don't know who's going to go there. We'll see if that price is the same on Friday as it is today. I mean, there's still 48 hours, a little under 48 hours to go. And maybe the price tag falls if the Cubs don't think that they can get what they want. So I'm sure that they're in on Kimbrel. But I think they're in on everybody. I honestly, in the bullpen, I mean, I think you could see them go get a couple of setup guys. You could see them go after a closer. You could see them go, try to, like I said, kind of attack it with numbers and get a few guys and try to deepen their bullpen that way. So, I think they're open to a lot of different scenarios. I do know they want to improve their bullpen, though. They lead the league in blown saves, and so they know they have work to do.
Yeah, you're right about that. It seems that they are making calls on just about every single name that has been mentioned. Scott Lauber from the Philadelphia Inquirer. So has the necessity for starting pitching and bullpen pitching kind of overtaken any of the offensive upgrades they may have been interested in?
That's a good question. It's a really good question. I mean, I think over the weekend, Dave Dombrowski was asked that question, like, could you just, go get a bat? If what you're looking for in the pitching market doesn't pan out. And, he did the whole tap dance about how it's, you got to be nimble and this and that. And you've got to be able to sort of adapt on the fly. But that said, look, I do think that the Eflin situation probably, as I said, puts a heightened focus on starting pitching. And so I think they're going to do everything they can to turn up starting pitching and bullpen right up until 4:00 on Friday. I suppose they could pivot and get a bat, but I really think that's on the back burner right now.
All right, a couple of questions within the team here, Scott. Is in your mind, is Spencer Howard a guy they would utilize to upgrade the roster?
Yeah, I think they already have. I mean, he started last week in New York on short rest, gave them 3 scoreless innings. They wanted to really turn him loose the other night against the Nationals on Monday night, but he had a blister problem, which capped him in about 4 innings, right? So I think they wanted to go deeper with him. He threw a bullpen today, came out of it fine, so they're expecting him to start over the weekend. I think they would love it if he could step up and grab a spot in the rotation. I think they feel like they can turn him loose a little bit more now. We're almost at August. You don't have to conserve innings as much as you did earlier in the year. You feel like you can sort of treat him more like a normal starting pitcher. I think they would absolutely love that if he could do that and provide quality innings. And I think they're probably a little more bullish on him doing that than some of their other options. That said, he hasn't done it yet, so he needs to go out and do it, and he needs to go out and be the pitcher that they think he is. So
No,
I think they'll give him a shot at it.
Yeah, no, I was almost, and that was to hear it from the perspective of keeping him. I'm almost talking about utilizing him to trade to get better.
I see what you're saying. No, I think they're open to a lot of different things, and if they were bowled over with an offer for him, I think they would certainly consider it. But, they also believe he's going to be a part of their rotation next year. So I don't think that they're actively out there going, hey, you can have this guy. I mean, I think that they would do it if they feel like the return is substantial enough, but it would have to be a substantial return because he'd be one of the bigger chips they have to play.
But not one of
even though he struggled.
Not one of these untouchable guys like maybe Abel or Bryson Stott.
I don't think so. I don't think I'd put him in that category per se.
What about Bohm? Do you think they're reevaluating that, or is it just too early to make a decision on him?
Similar to Howard, I mean, a guy who they really love and they expect will be a part of their club for a while, but he has really struggled this year. I think we've talked about this, that, we sort of think of him as a second-year player. For me, he's really still a rookie in a lot of ways. His rookie year was 40 games. And, I mean, I think it would not be uncommon for a rookie to struggle for the middle part of his rookie year. Rookies do this all the time. So I think that, it's a situation where, they're hopeful that he can make adjustments and figure it out, and then they'll go from there.
Do you think the current roster, Scott, or the current, Girardi and this team has to reevaluate playing Didi Gregorius every single day with the defensive issues and now offensive issues as well? Is that something that you think? I mean, we're seeing tonight that he's not in the lineup, but is that something they might have to consider with Bohm and Gregorius playing next to each other? Not a recipe for a lot of success defensively.
He is not in the lineup tonight. You're right. Girardi explained in part that it had to do with a lefty on the mound in Corbin. It was a good opportunity to give Gregorius a night off after a rough night defensively last night. But also, Ronald Torreyes has really played well, and so it's an opportunity to get him back, to keep him in the lineup. Look, I don't think that Torreyes is going to become the shortstop here long term. But that said, I think they need to figure out what's going on with Gregorius, especially defensively.
Yeah.
I know he hasn't hit much either, but especially defensively to figure out, what they can do to get him right.
A couple more real quick with Scott. Vince Velasquez, 7.74 ERA in his last 10 starts. I'm imagining they don't have another option, and he will continue to go?
As of now, yeah, he's pitching tomorrow.
Right.
So that's the plan.
Sir Anthony Dominguez, do we anticipate seeing him back this year?
Possibly in September. He's going to go out on a rehab assignment in August, and can last as long as a month. That's the maximum amount of time, assuming he doesn't have any setbacks. So, look, I believe his 1 year anniversary of his surgery is Friday. So, it typically takes, 12 to 15 months. And he didn't pitch a whole lot prior to the surgery. Remember, he didn't have the surgery until July. And he was shut down in spring training. We were in the middle of COVID. So yeah, there's a lot that has to go right, but they're hopeful that if he goes out on a rehab and feels good and pitches well, that maybe he could be a factor in September. But like I said, a lot would have to go right.
All right, we'll leave you with this. You wrote about Moniak yesterday. Him up, down, back, forth, here, there. Doesn't seem to play when he's up. Where does the organization see him at this point?
Look, I think in April they wanted him to play every day, and it took him a while, but to kind of get hot, find his rhythm at the plate. He did do that. He's had a really good month down there at Lehigh Valley. I think they want him to continue to play every day. So I think that's the plan, is to just have him continue to do that. He's 23. This is his first year in AAA. He did not play much last year because of COVID and the shutdown, and He had a knee injury at one point during the shutdown, so he didn't get to the alternate site when everybody else did. So in a lot of ways, he's making up for lost time, and they're hopeful that what they've seen this past month is going to be more along the lines of the kind of player he is. So they're very much still in a development situation with him and trying to figure out if he can be a part of this group going forward.
Scott Lauber, Philadelphia Inquirer. Phillies trade deadline Friday. Game tonight in question. Tomorrow, 1 o'clock. Scott, thanks so much, man.
All right. Sounds good, Mike.
At
Thanks.
Scott Lauber on Twitter. Phillies tonight against the Marlins. I'll give you the lineup once again. Segura, Real Muto. Let's see real quick. It's Segura, Real Muto, Harper, McCutchen, Hoskins, Bohm, Torreyes, Luke Williams, and Zach Wheeler gets the ball. Supposedly today against Washington, there are some possibilities, I guess, that game does not go off. The Nationals are not hitting. The grounds crew is basically, it appears that this game will not be played tonight. That's what it looks like here. That was a comment that Lauber made at the beginning that there was no Washington batting practice. We know Trey Turner last night had to leave the game in the middle of the game, or early in the game. I guess it was like the first or second inning. They pulled him off the field, and it appears that the Washington Nationals and Philadelphia Phillies game will not be played tonight due to COVID situation with and the interesting part about all that is, as Scott mentioned, the Nationals are 85%, so that really adds a wrinkle to this whole situation out there. Sports Bash Live 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app, and of course you can always watch the show live, and the live video stream is up over at 973 ESPN on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. If you want to watch the show, you can always leave a comment in the comment section. You can always text in as well. Everybody, we do appreciate you have a lot of options out there, as we tell you. You have a lot of options. If you take the time to text in or engage in the show, we always appreciate that. The whole trade situation, the Phillies are in a weird spot. They don't have a lot to move. People want them to be sellers. They can't be sellers. Nobody wants what they have. The stuff that, like the trade they made yesterday that got negated, that's the kind of trade they're going to get. The pitcher that they got, Tyler Anderson from Pittsburgh, they gave up 2 players from Clearwater. That's what they would get for their guys. That's what essentially they would get for Segura. That's what they would get for McCutchen. And they're not, like, I don't think they're trading offensive pieces at this point. You heard what they said the other day. Our offense has been fine. It's the pitching that's bad. So they're not sellers. I had the guy, why don't they just sell? What are they going to sell? Come on, man. All right, when we come back, a lot of stuff on the NFL. The Eagles are at camp today. Jeff Kerr, what did he see? What is he hearing? Our 97.3 ESPN.com Eagles insider covers the league nationally for CBS Sports. He'll join me on the other side coming up next. All right, day one of camp today. They report yesterday. They practice today. And also, Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni, they speak. Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports, 97.3 ESPN.com on it. Let's get a lot of insight on what happened today. On the first day of practice, Jeff Kerr, as the Eagles were back at the NovaCare complex. What's going on, man?
Hey, Mike, crazy day already. Just around the NFL, we got Aaron Rodgers unplugged.
Right.
Deshaun Watson shows up in a hoodie, then puts a jersey on. I'm telling you, Mike, we're not even at Eagles camp yet. We didn't even get to them today. Howie Roseman speaking was a real treat for us.
Yeah, I thought he had some interesting things to say. I'd like to kind of get some insight on from you and how that kind of played out. Let's start with the Zach Ertz stuff. I mean, Howie Roseman essentially admitting today that he anticipates Ertz being on the roster to start the season.
Yeah, secretly, I'm doing the fist pump. I'm fired up that Zach Ertz is going to be on this football team. This team is so much better with Zach Ertz on it than him not being on it. And everybody wants to say, well, the Eagles won't run 12 personnel as much. No, but I feel like Nick Sirianni will adapt to that. You can line up Zach Ertz in the slot if you really want to. If you want to go a 3 wide receiver set, you can do a lot of stuff with Zach Ertz on the field. And quite honestly, Dallas Goedert is going to have to take that job away from Zach Ertz. I think Zach Ertz has a lot to prove this year. And let's be honest, Mike, he's not only playing for the Eagles, he's playing for his NFL future, a contract, maybe, and the Eagles probably want him to play well. So maybe a team will give him that 3rd round pick they covet.
Yeah, I know that the whole Ertz thing still seems like it's not a completed story at this stage. So how would you handicap seeing Ertz on the roster September 12th against Atlanta?
I think he's there. I will go by what the GM says at this point. Zach Ertz will be on the Philadelphia Eagles week 1. They anticipate Zach Ertz being there. Now, obviously, plans change. It is July 28th. So we still got 7 weeks for that. But I think Zach Ertz is going to be here for the duration of training camp, and I think we're going to see him week 1.
All right, so let's get to Jalen Hurts and how they handled that whole situation today. They were asked and pried and plotted, and they tried all different ways to get it out of them, including a question that was asked if Joe Flacco was going to get first-team reps. Before they got to Jalen Hurts, they said, look, Jalen took the reps with the one. He worked hard. He's earned it. We want him to take the reins. But then later on they were asked, well, is he the starter on the 12th? Well, we can't really say that yet. We don't know. Read the tea leaves here.
Well, the tea leaves are Jalen Hurts is our starting quarterback right now. And obviously we couldn't mention the guy's name, but we can mention it on this show. Deshaun Watson. We can mention him. If Deshaun Watson gets traded here, all bets are off. But right now, Jalen Hurts is this team's starting quarterback. And Nick Sirianni, Howie Roseman basically saying they want Jalen Hurts to take the reins of this job. It's not that he's the starting quarterback now. It's we want you to prove to us we don't need to trade for this guy. And I think the only way to do that is to actually see Jalen Hurts play, not in preseason games, but in regular season games. But obviously the Eagles can do so much more evaluation than we can sitting behind the mic based on what they see at practice and all the film and how Jalen Hurts responds to all this. And I got to tell you, Jalen Hurts, they can say whatever they want about how he practiced today. I think it was an A+ on his press conference. I thought it was an A+ for effort. I really got to give Jalen Hurts a lot of credit today. He just kind of looked straight in the face and said, this is my job. Come take it.
Right. And look, they say we want him to take the reins. It's obvious. I mean, the Eagles want him to be the starting quarterback. The worst scenario is that he is so bad that they can't play him. I don't see that happening. So outside of them just wanting to kind of keep the messaging of competition, he is the starting quarterback. Now, you mentioned unless they make a trade for Deshaun Watson. I would imagine a trade for Deshaun Watson would probably include Jalen Hurts in it anyway, right?
You would think, right? I mean, why would you, unless you find some way to give up all those 3 draft picks, which, by the way, Carson Wentz isn't helping the situation. We can get into that anytime we want. But, yeah, unless you include a boatload of draft picks and not put Jalen Hurts in there, but I wouldn't see why the Houston Texans wouldn't want, in lamest terms, he is a proven starter in the league. I mean, he's played 4 games, and he played particularly well in 3 of them in his 3 full games, and he's a prospect. He is still kind of a prospect in this league. So, yeah, he's a very intriguing player that you would think you would include in a trade. But I'll tell you what, if the Eagles would find a way to get Deshaun Watson and keep Jalen Hurts here, they at least have an insurance policy in case something does go down with him.
All right, let's see. What else is on the agenda? There's so much out there today. Okay, so let's take a look at the Watson thing because, I was listening to Adam Schefter on my drive in today. He was on with Greeny, and he said there's a lot of anticipation that they might move him by the end of the week. So how does Howie Roseman kind of get involved there?
I said to Josh on Monday, I wouldn't be surprised if he was traded by my birthday, which is Sunday, August 1st. So, yeah, if Adam Schefter's thinking the same thing, I think the Texans want to get rid of this sooner rather than later. When you hear the multiple teams aspect of it, you have to wonder, are the Texans trying to get the Eagles to pay more? Are they trying to get the Denver Broncos to pay more? The Miami Dolphins to pay more? Whoever is interested in this guy. For all we know, the Washington football team could be interested in Deshaun Watson. We just don't know at this point. And
right, because right now, Jeff, to tell the listeners, Watson is not on any exempt list or anything. He is at camp with Houston and eligible to practice and do whatever everybody else is doing.
And the NFL has no plans on putting him on any exempt list either. And the NFL gave an explanation. We just don't have enough evidence at this time. And I mean, they could have enough evidence in October and November, and he gets suspended 6 games, and a team season can be ruined. But you know what? I got to go by what I know right now, unfortunately, and that is Deshaun Watson is at practice. And when Deshaun Watson is on the football field, he is a top 3 quarterback in the National Football League, right. And he's 25 years old.
And a key here, Jeff, is he has apparently been offered a plea deal, and he does not want to take the deal because he thinks he's innocent.
Yeah, and see, that's what worries me about this whole thing. Like, it's okay you think you're innocent, that's fine. But do you have any remorse for anything you might have done or, what you're alleged of doing? Or do you feel like you have to change? Because I'll tell you what, if me personally, if I got 22 allegations against me from 22 different women, I would think I'm the problem here, but that's just me. I am not Deshaun Watson. I've never put myself in that situation. I just can't believe that he was out there practicing today. Like, I thought for sure the NFL would say, hey, look, you're in the building. That's fine. We won't do anything, but we got to keep you out of the limelight here. And the Texans, look, and David Culley said today, I was on the Texas news conference. He goes, look, he's been nothing but good here. Like, it's business as usual for him, and we're going to treat it as such. That's paraphrasing. That's pretty much what he said today.
Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports, 97.3 ESPN on the Eagles front, of course. What else do we got? Left tackle. How did that kind of shake out today?
Well, Andre Dillard was with the first team. I mean, I wouldn't look too much into that, though, because Jeff Stoutland said in June, those two are going to rotate. So Jordan Mailata could be with the first team tomorrow, and it's going to be – those two are going to alternate. This battle probably will not be settled until the 53-man roster is done. And look, you couldn't even get a glimpse of how Andre Dillard really looked today because his practice was so quick, and it was pretty much an hour 10 minutes. It wasn't long, and you really weren't getting that much of a feel for what Andre Dillard was doing or Jordan Mailata was doing. I think it was more of let's get the guy's feet wet here. We're back at practice, and I mean, too many people were evaluating Jalen Hurts for my blood anyway. Like, yeah, I know how it is. First practice of the year, just from all the years of playing football in high school and stuff, you're rusty. And so it wasn't really the only thing to take away out of this was Andre Dillard was with the first team today, and take that with a grain of salt. But overall, I kind of want to see a mean streak in Andre Dillard. I wanted to see him walk the walk, as you will, as what he said going into the year. It was, hey, I'm tougher now. I wasn't mentally tough. I wasn't physically tough. I bulked up. Social media stuff don't bother me anymore. I'm ready to go, and I'm ready to win this job. So we'll see.
Devonta Smith admitted he did not have a good first day. I mean, is that I don't right. Well, the first thing I said, I'm laughing. I said the first thing I see is Devonta Smith dropped a pass, which is something. Oh, he doesn't drop anything. You come here and the first thing you do is drop a pass. Then you admit you didn't have a good day. There's no concern there. But I guess the whole wide receiving, how they roll those guys out will be a very interesting story, I think, these next 2 weeks. Where's JJ? What's Fulgham's role? Rieger didn't practice much today. He was limited. I think the stories are just oozing with intrigue with that position.
Yeah, I agree. And, there's going to be battles here. And I said today on Birds 365, I was guest host today, and, I forgot all about Travis Fulgham. I felt terrible. Like, I'm going down the roster, and I'm like, wait a minute, there's someone I forgot here. And then, of course, as soon as we go to commercial, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's right. Travis Fulgham's on this team, and he should make this roster just based on what he did last year. But you're right, Mike. It's who's going to be the X, who's going to play in the slot, who's going to be the Y, who's the deep threat. I think Devonta Smith, Jalen Reagor, Travis Fulgham are safe here. But you got to wonder where Greg Ward fits, John Hightower, Wes Watkins. Is there going to be 6 guys? Is there going to be 5 guys? Is there going to be a 7th guy that comes in there? Or an undrafted free agent or something like that? We just don't know. But I'm really curious to see what they do with Travis Fulgham, because he does seem like he can play that Alshon Jeffrey role, the X. He could kind of be like maybe a T.Y. Hilton type player. Not saying he's going to be T.Y. Hilton, but he can kind of play that role if the Colts choose to do that. How the Colts chose to do that when Nick Sirianni was there. If the Eagles kind of, how can I put it in words? Integrate that offense in there. But yeah, you're right, Mike. Like, where's Devonta Smith fit? Is he an X? Is he, going to play that Paris Campbell, Zach Pascal type role and be that dump off guy that you give quick passes to and you let him get yards after the catch? It's going to be interesting.
Jeff Kerr, we're looking at the first day of practice for the Eagles at training camp. Howie Roseman signed Steve Nelson the other day. I know Monday you probably talked about it with Josh, but how that kind of changes the complexity of where this team is, both defensively and overall. Because, Steve Nelson himself, I explained it, Jeff, as he doesn't win you 4 or 5 games because you have, it's not like getting Jalen Ramsey. It might win you a game or 2 because of he's that good. But I think what it does is it makes you more competitive in every game. That could make games that you just would not be competitive in to now being competitive in those games. And if you're competitive in a game, that could swing from a loss to a win.
Yeah, and he is not going to lose you again. I'll say that. Like, if we're going on baseball terms in terms of wins above replacement, Michael Jacquet's probably a -1, and Steven Nelson's probably, a 0 or a 0.5. He is one of those guys that you pointed out, Mike. He's not going to hurt you. Like, all of a sudden, you have depth at cornerback now. You have 2 guys that can start on the outside. You can put Avonte Maddox in the slot. Zach McPherson, all of a sudden, is a valuable number 4 cornerback for you. And if the Eagles think he's ready to go, he can still learn from how to play a slot from Avonte Maddox. He can learn under Darius Slay, learn under Steve Nelson, who, is a pretty good cornerback in his own right. Like, the Eagles needed to make a move like this. It helps out a guy like Craig James, who's probably going to be number 5 cornerback. Again, it just makes the cornerback room better. It was really weak outside of Darius Slay just because of where everybody fit, because you didn't have an outside cornerback. You needed this guy, and you got him.
Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. And if you're watching the show, you'll see Jeff. Of course, we'll do this a couple times a week as training camp is here. I know that getting Steve Nelson has certainly shored up that secondary. So you got Nelson, you got Maddox in the slot, you got Slay, you've got Harris, you got McLeod. So it seems that if they don't have an injury, this defense, I don't know, is it a good defense? If there's injuries have been a big problem for this team. But if they don't
have injuries. So, but overall, if you're looking at just the 11 on paper, I think it's a top 15 defense, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I kind of like how Jonathan Gannon's probably going to blitz more. And again, Fletcher Cox, they're doing a 3-4 zone type. Milton Williams is playing D-end, which I kind of like, because he can get after the quarterback a little bit for a defensive tackle. He's quick. Fletcher Cox plays the middle there. I kind of like that. You get to do multiple fronts, a.k.a. Matt Eberflus, Mike Zimmer. You've seen that over the years with them, so I kind of like that. I think that helps a guy like Jannard Avery. All of a sudden, you have depth at linebacker because Jannard Avery, they switched him to linebacker and they switched Joe Osman to linebacker, but they were also former edge rushers who could get after the passer. So that helps too. A little bit of the linebacking core. I like Alex Singleton. I like Eric Wilson. I don't know if I like anybody behind them. I think this defense has depth on the line. I think they have depth at safety. I'm a little concerned about cornerback, a little concerned about linebacker, but overall, I think top 15 unit is pretty respectable.
Yeah, I definitely think the starting defense, if no injuries occur, is a good, not great defense. If you get an injury, almost anywhere on this defense, you have a big hole all of a sudden. They do not have enough depth, in my opinion, at linebacker, corner, safety, and they're a little light on the defensive line too, even though I like the defensive line guys, if somebody gets hurt up front, I think they're in trouble.
Yeah, this isn't like offense where, say, Miles Sanders gets hurt. I think, obviously, it's a big hit, but they'll be all right. If an offensive lineman gets hurt, they'll be all right. But, yeah, you're right, Mike. On defense, outside of defensive end and maybe defensive tackle, I'm a little concerned there. So, do they need more depth? Yeah, but I think they got to see what these young guys got, especially a guy like Davion Taylor. I think he has something to prove this year. I mean, the guy was a third-round pick, and he pretty much did nothing last year.
All right, Jeff Kerr, we're looking at Eagles' first day of training camp. You know, what did you think, too, of the way Jalen Hurts handled the questions about Deshaun Watson and all that stuff?
I love it. You know, he pretty much just kind of downplayed it, like saying, hey, man, you know, I'm the guy. Like, I'm not even worried about him. And, you know, this is my team, and I'm going to take command of it. I love what he said, something like, the lamp isn't full. I got to remember the quote. I tweeted it. But it was something like, the lamp is never full or something like that. You know, he had a bunch of, like, anecdotes today. Jalen Hurts is pretty confident. It was a lot different than the Carson Wentz thing where it's like, Jalen Hurts was ready to tackle everything. He even joked about it. He goes, oh, so this is what y'all's like, you know, when everybody's asking him questions. You know, he had a couple of us laughing today. I mean, you cannot knock the kid for his confidence. You really can't. I got to give Jalen Hurts a ton of credit there. I thought he handled the media really well. And look, he looks the part, plays the part of QB1, but will he execute when it's time? And I think that's what we're going to find out over these next 7 weeks, Mike.
Yep, that's for sure. Today, Hurts, from what we talked to Jeff Mosher earlier, he did make an observation that he thought Hurts struggled a bit today, throwing the football, not accurate, all that kind of stuff. And obviously, that's going to happen. I mean, this is a guy
Day one.
What's that?
Day one, right.
There's a guy, though, that has a lot of eyes looking at him. And, but this is something that he's used to, obviously, hearing all this. He transferred, he got replaced, all that. So if there's somebody that can handle it. I thought one of the things, too, I think it was Howie Roseman that brought up, he was asked about, where this team is and all this stuff. And he went right to the offensive line. And I think that, to me, the messaging from Roseman this offseason, all right? The messaging from Roseman this offseason is that he thinks this team can compete. Do you see that as well?
I think so, too. I think Howie Roseman got a bunch of good veterans on one-year deals, Ryan Kerrigan, Steven Nelson, Eric Wilson, Anthony Harris, the little patch and plays, and I think he looked at it as, look, our offensive line, we're deep because we had a lot of guys play last year. We're getting a lot of guys back. Our defensive line was one of the best in football getting to the quarterback, and we only rushed 4. What's going to happen when we rush more guys, when we call more blitz packages? And we're going to protect this quarterback. We are going to do what we did not do last year, where we failed Carson Wentz. We are going to protect Jalen Hurts, and Jalen Hurts is going to make enough plays to make a difference. And I think Howie Roseman looks at this like he looked at the 2013 Eagles. That was a 4-12 football team, but they had a lot of injuries on the offensive defensive line. Everybody got healthy. They won 10 games. Chip had an innovative offense, and they made the playoffs and probably should have won a playoff game. I think the Eagles feel like in the NFC East, they can compete because I don't think anybody's banging down the door in this division saying this division is ours for the taking.
Yep, so much happened over the weekend with Steve Nelson here, Zach Ertz reporting. It's the day one, and we have plenty of coverage going on over at 97.3 ESPN.com, at Jeff Kerr, CBS on Twitter, and, of course, right here on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. And we have plenty more coverage when Jeff's back on Friday. We have plenty more over on the website. We have plenty everywhere. Eagles back. It's good to have them back. It felt good to kind of, get them in the firing squad right off the bat. Is Jalen Hurts the starter? Well, we didn't get that answer today, but I think both you and I agree that Jalen Hurts will be the starter for this football team unless they make a trade for Deshaun Watson, how do you handicap that?
Well, I'll tell you what, Mike. We had 2 years where we could not be at training camp. Last year was a Zoom year. So, you pretty much got your first face-to-face with Howard Roseman, with Jalen Hurts. I'm surprised I didn't get to see Jeffrey Lurie today, honestly.
All right. Well, we'll keep our eye on that and everything that develops. Tomorrow they're back, and we'll have more with Jeff Kerr on Friday's edition here on the Sports Bash. All right, Jeff, take care, man.
Yep, sounds great. Thanks for having me on, Mike.
All right, Jeff Kerr will be back on Friday's show. We'll talk more Eagles with him every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Jeff Kerr from 97.3 ESPN.com and CBS Sports. He covers the league nationally for CBS. He'll be covering the Eagles for us this season. He'll be at the games and practices and all that good stuff. You get all the insight on the Eagles from Jeff Kerr from CBS Sports and 97.3 ESPN.com. Sports Bash is brought to you by Indeed. With Indeed Instant Match, just sponsor a post and immediately receive a short list of quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed match your job description. Visit Indeed.com credit for more details. I am Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. On Twitter, at Mike Gill Show. Hopefully, you will follow me there. And hopefully, you will stick around. Don't forget, game night tonight to Weinberg Wednesday. Dave Weinberg from 97.3 ESPN.com joins Josh on game night tonight. All the latest on Ben Simmons, which is changing almost by the minute. The Phillies game canceled tonight due to COVID. We just talked to Scott Lauber. All the information on the trade deadline, that is Friday. The NHL free agency opened today. For all the latest moves from the Flyers, Kevin Durso has it at 97.3 ESPN.com. All right, getting ready to wrap up a Wednesday edition. It's been a busy day today. So we had the Flyers, couple free agent moves. They signed a goaltender and a defenseman today. They signed a defenseman yesterday. They made some trades last week. This Flyers team has really reshaped itself. For the latest on that, go to 973ESPN.com. Our Flyers insider Kevin Durso has you covered over there. Also, the Phillies game tonight has been postponed, right? It's COVID-related. Washington has COVID issues, so they are not playing tonight. So you have no Phils tonight, right?
No Phils tonight. Yeah, it's apparently the national situation is lacking information. If you listen to all the experts online, because according to guys like Heyman and Rosenthal and all the national guys, they're basically making it like there's a outbreak. But the people who are in the ballpark right now are saying we don't have enough information to make that statement.
Yeah, well, it's a weird one because Washington apparently is at 85%.
They're over 85%.
Right.
Among the tier 1 people. And part of the issue right now is Trey Turner, he tested positive, got pulled out of the game last night.
Right.
And then today, the report by Passan is that multiple players and coaches have tested positive today. So it seems like they all got the COVID from the same place, if they're testing positive all around the same time.
That's an interesting situation. Like, yeah, I don't understand in this situation. You know, like Michael Jordan, again, like this is a different situation. Jordan plays the flu game. He's sick. He can get other people sick by playing in that game. At what point, I guess that's the whole point of if the other team's not 85 or this is where it gets to be such a wonky situation. But like, you know, if you're not feeling well,
right?
Like if you had a cold and you weren't feeling well, or you had the flu and you weren't feeling well, you could still make that. No one would say you cannot play the game because you had the flu. And I'm not saying that these are the same thing. I'm just saying, like, at what point do you get where this guy feels fine, he has no symptoms, but he tested positive?
Well, that's what Ryan Tannehill was saying earlier today. He says that he feels like some of these COVID protocols that are forcing guys to get vaccinated when guys are still testing positive, it honestly makes him feel uncomfortable. He said, he feels the whole situation is, he feels like they're getting mixed messages. And he's like, look, I'm vaccinated, Tannehill said. He goes, but he said, if the NFL didn't require me to do it, I don't know if I would have gotten vaccinated. And now that I am vaccinated and I'm finding out guys who are vaccinated are getting positive tests, what do I do?
Well, and it's like it's a really weird situation where you're saying, I feel fine, I could play the game, but you're not letting me play the game. I'm vaccinated. You know, it's a weird situation. Like, look, there's no handbook for this.
Right.
I think that needs to be laid out there too. There is no handbook on how to do this, but that guy tested positive. He says he feels fine. At what point? I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, at what point in life, 2 years from now, is that still going to happen? Hey, this guy tested positive for COVID, feels fine, can't play. Is that, you know what I mean? Like, you following what I'm saying here?
Well, look at Chris Paul.
At what point is it, hey, I feel fine and I can play? So
yeah, Chris Paul was vaccinated. He tested positive for COVID. He missed 2 games. He missed 2 games of the Eastern Conference Finals.
Western
Conference Finals,
yeah.
And he said, I felt fine, but I was testing positive, so they wouldn't let me anywhere near the building. Basically.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's the tricky part of this whole thing, what's coming down the pipeline there, I think.
And there's a lot of people out there who, when they do get sick with something that's non-COVID, they get paranoid because, like, do I have COVID? So they go get a COVID test, and there's a possibility that, maybe if you wait too long to get yourself actually treated for what it really is, that you take longer to get better.
That whole, I'm like mystified by what they do here. How do they take that next step? That's all. I'm not saying they're right, wrong, or indifferent. It just, look, the game tonight postponed. Though tomorrow it's going to be a single admission doubleheader at 12:05. That has just been announced by the Phils. So tomorrow they'll play 2.
Right. So is it really an outbreak among the Nationals, or is it just a temporary setback?
Exactly. Yes, exactly. So you couldn't play tonight, but you can play
tomorrow,
14 hours from now.
Like, is it really an outbreak? Like, are we maybe just like, are we just using the wrong terminology? Do we need to find new, like, phrasing for this stuff, Mike? so people understand it better.
Howie, real quick. I know we're out of time here. Roseman kind of gave us an idea about Jalen Hurts. It feels like he's going to be the starter. I think nobody felt otherwise. Jason Kelsey, Zach Ertz, another longtime Eagle. It appears, if you believe Howie Roseman, will be here for the start of the season. I'm sure you'll have plenty more on that with Dave Weinberg tonight.
Dave Weinberg has a very strong position on the Zach Ertz topic.
Great. Well, I'll be listening to that. Good to be back today. Maybe I'll take off tomorrow. Feels pretty good not to be here. I think I got everything off my chest today.
You got it out of your system?
Oh, boy. It was a long week, dude. It was a long week. It was hot. Played a lot of baseball. Scouted a lot of baseball. Oof, man. Watched a lot of film. I'll be heading to the World Series in a couple of weeks. Until then, I'm back tomorrow. Thank you, sir. Josh is up next with Game Night.